Chapter 1335. The leader was in his 30s and had a burly figure in green armor. While speaking to Mo Lien and the others, this person spoke extremely quickly, rattling off everything like a bamboo tube. Everyone, I believe that everyone came to Jiaozhong base for the same purpose, to carry out this cleanup and material collection mission. We set off from Rice City and were besieged by many zombies here. Now that we finally broke free, we sacrificed 90% of our team members. Then shouldn't everyone be a little friendlier to us? Even if you don't give us half of the supplies, at least give us 1/5 or 2/5 of the supplies so that we can bring them back to Rice City to complete the mission. Otherwise, this is too unreasonable. TSK, a female mystic cultivator in Arbor's team, snorted disdainfully. Please, we're not running a charity. We're all here for a mission and have nothing to do with each other. You're making it sound like we owe you. That doesn't make sense, right? Friend, what you're saying. Leader, why are you being so long-winded with them? Callie suddenly took out a carved token from under her skirt and waved it in front of everyone. Jiaozhong base was originally Rice City's territory. All the supplies belonged to Rice City. Now, I order you to hand them over, or else. Oh. I'll go. A small commotion came from Rice City's team. Just as Callie was blabbering on, a middle-aged team member suddenly pounced from behind and hugged Callie from behind. He opened his mouth and bit the back of her neck. Oh, oh, oh. Rice City's team members cried out in horror. Heavens, this person has mutated. The leader turned around and chopped off the head of the team member who had pounced on Callie with one slash. All the Rice City team members scattered in all directions, leaving a large empty space in the middle for Callie and the leader. Carly covered the back of her neck, which was stinging with pain, and let out a piercing shriek. Don't be nervous. Just as the leader was about to speak, he caught a glimpse of Arbor's team from the corner of his eye. They took up their stances and aimed at Callie, ready to attack. Don't attack, don't attack. The leader gestured for everyone to stop. He was so anxious that he was sweating profusely. It's fine. He'll be fine. You're lying to yourself. Brother Axe roared, someone in your team has mutated, but you've been kept in the dark. No, that's not it. Cut the crap and kill this woman. No, don't attack, don't move. The leader stepped back while protecting Carly. He glared at Axe brother and the others. What are you doing? Didn't you see that she was bitten? She'll mutate soon, okay? Liang Qingqing frowned. You're not helping her, you're harming your entire team. We have a way to suppress the zombie transformation. The leader roared. Ni Shang, come out. At the back of the Rice City team, a girl who looked to be about 17 or 18 years old walked out. She had 2 braids and her cheeks were flushed red. That girl bit her finger and grinned foolishly. She stared at Duan Yu in a daze, looking like she couldn't pull her gaze away and couldn't walk anymore. Arbor's team all turned to look at Duan Yu. The latter was originally leisurely fanning his raven bone fan, but his handsome face stiffened when he saw that girl's infatuated gaze. Chapter 1336. Pfft, eldest Qin snickered mischievously. Oh, you've hit it off just like that. Jojo. Duan Yu immediately hid behind Arbor. The little fellow extended 2 fingers and compared the distance and direction of their line of sight. Suddenly, she raised a small hand to block Duan Yu's front and hollered, "What are you looking at?" Now that she was standing in front of everyone, it felt like she had someone to rely on. Although the little lady was petite, her image immediately grew taller in everyone's eyes. Situ Yi twitched his mouth and threw Duan Yu a look of disdain for being a good-for-nothing. Then, he stepped forward and asked, "Leader of the Rice City team, are you trying to tell us that Miss Ni Shang from your team can help suppress the zombie poison's mutation?" "That's right. The leader nodded and glared fiercely at the love-struck Ni Shang. Hurry! Treat Callie. Ni Shang foolishly glanced at Duan Yu a few more times and was kicked twice by the leader before reluctantly retracting her gaze and walking to Callie's side. The wound is here. Ni Shang, hurry up. The leader pointed at the back of Callie's neck where she was bitten, indicating for her to act quickly. Ni Shang smacked her lips and reached out to place her right hand on the back of Callie's neck. Everyone saw her right hand emitting a faint glow, and their noses were instantly filled with a faint medicinal fragrance. Wow! A female mystic cultivator from Arbor's team sniffed and commented, "What a rich medicinal fragrance." Standing next to Qiao Mu, Mo Lian's eyes flickered, and he only glanced at that girl called Nick Heng before retracting his gaze. "You've never seen an apothecary before, right?" the leader of the Rice City team said smugly to Arbor's team. "It's normal that you haven't." What apothecary? Brother Axe and the rest had indeed never heard of apothecaries. After all, apothecaries had always been very rare superhumans, so it was normal that they hadn't seen them before. Superhumans. The leader pointed at Ni Shang and exclaimed loudly, "She's in our team. The only apothecary." Unlike those pill alchemists who painstakingly practice pill refinement, apothecaries like Ni Shang are born with a unique medicinal effect. Axe Brother and the others looked at each other in dismay. The female mystic couldn't help but ask in confusion, "You mean that she can save those mutated zombies?" An uproar broke out in Qiao Mu's 100-person team. Did the appearance of this so-called apothecary come to save all the humans on Seacombe Planet? Don't listen to his nonsense. Arbor's voice was indifferent, as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over him. If it can really cure the corpse poison, then that member of their team wouldn't have mutated just now. Everyone thought that it made sense, and they all looked at the leader suspiciously. The leader stammered and hurriedly said, "Although we can't completely eradicate it now, as long as Ni Shang's special ability evolves slightly, then. Brother Axe and the others hissed at him. "You're screwing your teammates over, do you know that?" They all shouted at the same time. "You're the one whose head was kicked by a donkey. If you can't get rid of them, does that mean they will go crazy in the team at any time? You still don't know how to learn your lesson." "Enough." Mo Lian suddenly spoke up. "Ignore them. We'll set off immediately and head to Rice City first." Chapter 1337. Captain, it's bad. Several hundred to 1,000 more zombies have arrived outside. They're closing in on us. The Rice City team leader's expression changed, and he hastily grabbed Callie's wrist. He took the token from her hand and waved it in front of Mo Lian and the others. "Although I don't want to do this, this is Rice City Base's token. Seeing this token is equivalent to seeing the city lord. I order you to hand over all the supplies you've gathered." Everyone rolled their eyes at the sky in unison. "Hey, punk, are you here to be funny?" Brother Axe looked at the level 10 mystic cultivator in front of him and snorted disdainfully. These people were definitely crazy. Otherwise, why would they want to snatch supplies from them when they were facing a formidable enemy? A few shrimp soldiers and crab generals dared to spout nonsense in front of their 100-man team of great mystic cultivators. Who exactly gave them such courage? Mo Lian didn't waste her breath on him and directly fished out a black token from her sleeve. She waved it in front of the team leader. "The Mo capital fortification has confiscated all of Jiaozhong Base's supplies. If there's anything, have your city lord talk to me." The Rice City team leader's eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. Of course, he recognized the token in Mo Lian's hand with a dragon claw imprinted on it. That was the highest Mo capital base's token. Puffing sounds came from outside the crumbling earth wall, and a dozen zombies appeared in front of them at the same time. Go, 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 go. Go. The Rice City team leader could only temporarily give up on collecting supplies and lead the team in running. Liang Qingqing couldn't resist snickering. She shook her head and said, "Where did they find this weirdo? How can he be the captain like this? No wonder the entire team was almost wiped out. Let's go." Mo Yen pulled Arbor's small hand and also led the team out of the collapsed city lord's estate. Along the way, everyone frequently looked back and used mystic energy to dispose of the zombies that wanted to approach. They had already encountered tens of thousands of zombies before, so these several hundred to 1,000 zombies were simply a piece of cake to them. In order to dispose of the zombies as quickly as possible, the 100-man team automatically formed 20 small teams. Every 5 people formed a team and cooperated to kill the remaining zombies. Fighting and running at the same time, they quickly left the vicinity of the city lord's mansion. "That woman called Carly has been poisoned. I have to find an opportunity to deal with her." Liang Qingqing extinguished one of the corpse puppets behind Situ Yi with a burst of profound energy. With a sweeping kick, she swept the other corpse puppet away. Dozens of profound energy simultaneously struck the corpse puppet's head on the ground, turning its head into a hornet's nest. Boom! A streak of lightning flashed across the horizon. Everyone raised their heads and looked over. "It's going to rain." Arbor tightened his grip on Mo Lien's hand. He had a bad premonition. "Do you think they'll do it again?" "Very likely. We have to get to Rice City base before the storm." Mo Lien called out and summoned the Golden Dragon 7th Yen. The members of the 100-man team immediately lined up and jumped onto the back of the Golden Dragon. A few members of the Rice City team cried out excitedly, "Wow, it's their mystical beast. Their mystical beast is actually a legendary dragon." "Oh my God, you're wrong. It's not a mystical beast. It should be a sacred beast, a golden dragon. Quick, quick, let's follow them. This golden dragon's speed must be very fast. We'll definitely be able to return to the city before the sky turns dark." Just as the members of the Rice City team took a step, they heard a dragon's roar and the golden dragon swung its tail. Chapter 1338. The Rice City team members! These people actually abandoned them and ran straight back to Rice City. "Damn it!" Callie touched the wound on the back of her neck and said to the team leader, Zhong Hua, "Even if they reach the entrance of Rice City, they might not be able to enter." "That's right." Another person cried out indignantly. He turned around and suddenly roared in shock. Suddenly, he was grabbed and pressed down by a zombie that was baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. Bam! The man and zombie fell to the ground like a human pyramid, causing a series of screams. Callie hurriedly jumped onto a mystic beast summoned by the team leader, Zhong Hua. The two of them yelled at the other team members, "Let's go." There were less than 10 people left. They hurriedly abandoned the team member who was being pressed down by the zombie and hurriedly fled. "Save me, save!" The member of the Rice City team managed to pull out a bloodied and broken palm from the gap between the zombie's bites. He gradually fell weakly to the ground. Arbor sat beside Mo Lien and looked at the chaos below. Then, he blocked out the screams of the Rice City team members. "These people are really funny." Arbor shook his head and said. "That team leader, in what way did he look like a truly responsible and capable leader? Going on a mission was simply a joke." Mo Lien reached out and stroked his waist. He squeezed gently and said, "Jojo, I'm just worried about you." "What do I have to worry about?" Arbor turned to look at her. "But speaking of which, after this battle, I realize that my body is still quite weak. When facing a spirit realm expert, the weakness of my body was revealed." "Silly girl." Mo Lien smiled and shook her head. "After all, you haven't broken through to the spirit realm. The strength of your body naturally can't be compared to a spirit realm expert. There must be a way to improve it." She looked at him with bright eyes. For example, she could refine a few body-forging pills suitable for her. Or, Master, I have a bone-forging pill here. Do you want to try it? At this moment, Chucho suddenly interrupted her thoughts and communicated with her spiritually. Master, this bone-forging pill is a little fierce. You might feel uncomfortable for a while after taking it. But after 3 days, your bone marrow will definitely be greatly improved. If it's so effective, why didn't you give it to me before? Chucho mumbled, how could Chucho take it out in the past? Furthermore, with Master's previous cultivation, he wouldn't have been able to withstand such a powerful bone-forging pill. In that case. Arbor thought for a moment and said, well, let's talk about it when we get back to the capital. There was no need to mention Little Seven's flying speed. She brought everyone to the entrance of Rice City in the evening. Contrary to leader Zhonghua's expectations, Rice City didn't stop them from entering the city. In fact, when the Crown Prince revealed his identity, the guards were so shocked that they rushed in to report. When Rice City's city lord heard that His Highness the Crown Prince had personally come, he was so scared that he pissed his pants. He hurriedly led everyone to welcome him. When City Lord Sun led everyone into the City Lord Manor and was ordering people to serve their meals with an obsequious smile, the rain that had been struggling for a long time finally came pouring down. Mo Lien walked to the window and lifted the curtain with her slender fingers to look outside. Arbor quickly walked to her side and stuck out his little head to take a look, but he suddenly grabbed his little hand. Arbor blinked and asked curiously, what did you see? Chapter 1339. No. The rain was quite heavy this time, and the chilly drizzle seeped into the window. A silver-threaded cloak appeared in Mo Lien's hand, and he draped it over Xiao Mu before pulling her to the table to sit down. I'll go out to take a look later. Stay inside and don't come out. However, Arbor shook her head and said, I also want to go out and take a look. Mo Lien paused as he held her hand. Just as he was about to speak, there was a sudden knock on the door. He turned around and dryly said, come in. A string of servants walked in while carrying plates of food. They bowed submissively and respectfully before placing the food on the table one by one. Your Highness, do you have any other orders? Mo Lien waved his hand to dismiss them before holding Arbor's small hand and saying, it's raining heavily, so I'll go take a look first. I'll call you out if there's any movement. You were injured today. He pulled her into his arms and said softly, don't make me worry anymore. Arbor pursed her small mouth and nodded helplessly. Stay here and eat. Mo Lien grasped her small hand and planted a light kiss on the corner of her forehead. Afterwards, he let go and smiled faintly at her. After standing up, he quickly walked outside. The moment Prince Mo left, he called out to the next room, Duan Yu, what are you waiting for? Duan Yu heaved a long sigh and flashed to his side. You never call me when there's good news, but you always bring me with you when there's bad news. I say, where are you guys going? I'm going too. Situ Yi also hastily dashed out of the room and caught up with the two. Arbor propped up her chin with one hand and picked up her chopsticks to poke at the dishes. She casually moved her chopsticks a few times before glancing at the rain outside the window again. Actually, that small injury of hers. Arbor gently lifted a corner of her clothes and looked at the smooth patch of skin on the left side of her waist. She was also a bit puzzled. It was obvious that the old witch's fire dragon tail had swept across this area before, but before she could apply any medicine on it, the wound had mysteriously disappeared by itself. She had asked Chucho if this was the effect of its wood spirit's endless growth. However, Chucho also felt that this was a little strange. It said that even wood spirits couldn't repair themselves so quickly. At the very least, the wound would have to wait until tomorrow to heal. But now, without her knowledge, the wound had healed on its own. In addition, Arbor did not feel anything wrong with his internal organs that were injured by the black double-headed crow's sound wave. He should have been cured as well. That's pretty weird, all right. She propped up her chin, picked up a piece of braised pork that looked pretty good, and stuffed it into her mouth. She chewed for a while, then frowned and spat it out. The meat was dry and unpalatable. The moment he ate it, he could tell that the ingredients were not fresh anymore. But in this day and age, it was good to be able to eat and drink like the mayor. Arbor had never been picky about food. But this red braised meat was too disgusting. She picked a few vegetables with her chopsticks, and after eating, she felt a little sleepy. After a few consecutive battles today, she had used up a lot of her profound energy. She originally wanted to lie down casually on the bed and continue to pay attention to Mo Lien and the rest's movements in the middle of the night. Who would have thought that she would actually fall asleep carelessly? She slept all the way until dawn and did not even wake up in the middle of it. When she woke up, it was already late in the morning. When Arbor sat up from the bed, she had a dazed look on her face. It was only when she heard the door creak open that she turned her head around in a daze and looked at the two servant girls who came in through the door. Chapter 1340. Didn't she say that she would personally subdue the night cupboards? How did she fall asleep? Arbor's short-circuited string was pulled back, and the two maids also came forward while shouting. "Crown Princess! Crown Princess, you're awake!" Arbor looked at them with a blank expression and nodded mechanically. "Where's the Crown Prince?" "Crown Princess, you don't know. Last night, His Highness the Crown Prince, together with 3 young masters with extraordinary skills, killed 8 strange birds." When the young maid mentioned this, her face was flushed red, as if she had killed those 8 night cupboards. Another person cupped her face and said with a love-struck expression, "Heavens, such a big commotion in the middle of the night last night had awakened everyone in the city." The heroic bearing of the 4 young masters on the city gate tower was simply too impressive. Arbor looked at them expressionlessly. "I'm asking you where the Crown Prince is. What the hell are you blabbering about?" Arbor got off the bed and ran to wash his face and rinse his mouth. "Crown Princess, do you know how powerful His Highness is? His Highness broke the wings of that strange bird that was cawing with his bare hands and pulled it down from the sky." That's right, that's right. That Sither young master is really good. Are you guys done being love-struck?" Arbor grabbed one of the young girls who was holding her face and slapped his head heavily on her head. "I'm asking you where the Crown Prince is." This voice was soft and crisp, and the sound almost broke through the 9 heavens. After half a cup of tea, the maid pouted and held her head that hurt from the slap. She led Arbor all the way to the back garden of the city lord's mansion. After yesterday's rainstorm, the rain washed the ground clean. Lustrous water droplets hung on the treetops and branches. At a glance, the world seemed to have been washed a bit brighter. After bringing Arbor to a small moon-shaped arched door, the maidservant pursed her lips and poked her head inside. "His Highness ordered that no one is to disturb him. He and the other young masters are inside." Arbor rolled up his small sleeves and turned his head to point at the many women hanging on the outer wall. He asked in shock, "What are they doing? Fuck, are these women crazy? Why are some of them holding banners in their hands? You came to the city lord's mansion to demand payment. What debt collector? Aya, Crown Princess, you don't know." At the mention of this topic, the young maidservant's voice became softer and softer. With a flushed face, she said in a love-struck manner, "Last night, His Highness the Crown Prince and the 3 young masters rushed up the tallest tower of our rice city like the wind and fought a fierce battle with those strange birds. His skills are really too cool, okay?" Arbor raised his hand and slapped the back of the maidservant's head. "Get to the point. They saved all the citizens in the city and are now the best husband candidates in the hearts of all the young girls in Rice City. They have now been conferred as Rice City's 4 great handsome men by the girls and have successfully leaped to the top of our Rice City's 10 great handsome men ranking." Arbor snickered, but soon after, her little stoic face tensed up. And then she freaking still couldn't hold it in and started laughing uproariously. The maidservant leading the way was a bit dumbfounded. She stared at her blankly and asked, "Crown Princess, are you unhappy that His Highness is so popular? This smile was probably a fake one, right? Otherwise, how could she smile so stiffly? It was like a fake smile. She was probably fuming mad on the inside. Arbor, Rice City's 4 great handsome men, ha 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 ha. What a great honor. Chapter 1341. Arbor's figure flashed, brushing past the maidservant as she walked towards the small arched door. The 2 city lords' estate guards guarding the door jumped in fright and hastily shouted, "Who goes there?" When they saw that it was Arbor, they hastily cupped their hands at her. Greetings to the Crown Princess. This humble one did not see clearly that it was the Crown Princess. His Highness has instructed that unrelated people are not permitted to approach this rear garden. Arbor waved her hand and directly ran towards a place in the rear garden, following their auras. She ran past the rockery and winding corridor, and when her figure brushed past the vicinity, she involuntarily slowed down. Before her was a scene of withering branches and yellow leaves, but the 4 people in this scene truly made one unable to look away. The 4 great beauties of Rice City were currently sitting under a half-withered tree, sipping tea and chatting. Mo Lien and Duan Yu were both dressed in snow-white robes, each holding a jade cup. Situ Yi was dressed in black, and he was fanning himself from time to time. Eldest young Sir Qin was dressed in an enchanting purple robe, and together, they truly gave off a picturesque feeling. It felt like even under a withered tree, they were also ethereal. Situ Yi was the first to see Arbor running over, and his eyes brightened as he stood up and walked towards her. "Little junior sister, you're awake." When Arbor saw him, she instantly recalled the title of the 4 great beauties of Rice City and couldn't hold it in anymore. This country bumpkin title was truly too hilarious. She pointed at him and tried her best to keep a stoic face, but she instantly burst into laughter. In Situ Yi's shock, the folding fan in his hand fell to the ground with a clatter. Duan Yu flashed over and excitedly ran to her side. "Jojo, why are you smiling at Situ Yi and not me?" Just as he was about to hook her sleeve, Mo Lien swiftly ran to his wifey's side and anxiously carried her over. He reached out to rub her small face and sternly said, "You're not allowed to laugh." Vexing, how could she laugh so happily in front of another man? He reached out to caress her little face again. "Laugh when we get home." Xiao Mu retracted her smile at once, but when she met Mo Lien's phoenix eyes, she couldn't hold back her laughter again. Mo Lien's eyes couldn't resist smiling, and he reached out to pull his wifey into his embrace and pat her. "What is it, quickly tell me, which idiot made my Xiao Xiao so happy?" "Lien, you've become the number 1 of the top 10 handsome men in Rice City. Other than that, the 4 of you have also been crowned as the 4 great beauties of Rice City." Arbor laughed out loud. Eldest Qin's eyes flickered as he looked at Arbor. He pointed at himself with his folding fan. "We?" Arbor nodded repeatedly. He couldn't restrain the smile in the corner of his eyes. He looked at Mo Lien with curved eyes and said, "I'm a little curious. I wonder what the other 6 handsome men in Rice City look like." "Alas, isn't that simple? Just get someone to bring them here." Situ Yi was a clown, and he casually added, causing the other 3 to glare repeatedly at him. Situ Yi, fuck, he was indirectly admitting that he was one of the 10 great beauties of Rice City. "Let's talk about that strange bird from yesterday instead," Mo Lien said softly as he rubbed his wifey's face. Arbor looked at him and said while stifling his laughter, "There's a large group of women outside hanging on the wall to look. They want to witness the elegance of the 4 great beauties of Rice City." Eldest Qin choked on his tea. Duan Yu took a deep breath and waved his hand to shout, "Someone come. Go invite the people on the 10 great beauties of Rice City here." Chapter 1342. The original 10 people on the ranking list of Rice City's 10 great handsome men were all invited into the city lord's estate's back garden. This action immediately caused the girls hanging on the outer wall to shriek and shout crazily for a while. However, when Mo Lien and the others saw the true appearances of Rice City's 10 great handsome men, their handsome faces nearly contorted from anger. These 10 people dared to rank with them as Rice City's 10 great handsome men with their appearances. Ah, pooh, pooh, pooh. They weren't some Rice City's 10 great handsome men. Among the 10 people, other than the delicate scholar with his nose in the air who looked like a dog, the other 9 were simply ugly and unbearable to look at. However, seeing how Jojo was so amused that she couldn't stop laughing, they didn't feel like bickering with these repulsive people. After admiring them for several minutes, Mo Lien waved her hand and had the people chase these handsome men out. Not long after, the royal guards ran in and excitedly reported that those young girls hanging on the wall had all gone to chase after Rice City's 10 great handsome men with amorous feelings. Situ-E spat out a mouthful of tea and then pretended to leisurely wipe the corner of his mouth. Cough, it looks like our Mo Kingdom Capital's 10 great handsome men ranking is the true ranking without any exaggeration. Eldest young Sir Qin shook his head while fanning himself. Right, I'd rather be ranked on the same level as Second Qin. I don't want to be ranked on the same level as those repulsive melons. Duan Yu quickly poured himself a cup of tea to calm his shock. Don't you guys agree? Situ-E and the others nodded repeatedly, expressing great agreement. When eldest Qin turned around, he discovered that the little stoic was no longer smiling. She had switched back to her original stoic face and was expressionlessly looking at them. Why did he feel like this child was so funny? Let's talk about what happened last night. You guys showed off your skills and charmed all the unmarried young girls in Rice City. It was such a big commotion, yet she fell asleep. Thinking about it now, she really wrung her hands. The 4 of them twitched their mouths. We did slaughter 8 night cowbirds. Mo Lien held her small hand and said, however, we didn't obtain any more useful information. We couldn't find any clues from those night cowbirds. Qin De chuckled. It's not a secret if it can be found so easily. The reason why a secret was because it was well hidden. How could he reveal himself so easily? Everyone was speechless. Arbor tilted his head and glanced at Mo Lien. Don't worry. Just instruct the various fortifications to make preparations. As for the future, let's talk about it later. Mo Lien nodded. Alright then. We'll leave this afternoon and return to Guanlan. Arbor's paralyzed little face instantly revealed a lively teasing expression, which fell into Mo Lien's eyes and almost stunned him. Aren't you going to stay here and enjoy the glory of being one of the top 10 most handsome men in Rice City for a few more days? Thank you. Situ-E speechlessly added, right now, I feel that the Mo Kingdom's 10 great handsome men are more suitable for me. Get out of the way. Get out of the way. How dare you stop me? He must have eaten a bear's heart and leopard's guts. A familiar voice was heard, and they all exchanged glances. Judging from this voice, it seemed to be the leader of that Rice City team, the one called Zhonghua. Situ-E poured another cup of tea for them and looked up at the arched door, only to see that leader leading his team over in a flurry. Chapter 1343. The few of them exchanged glances and raised their heads to see Zhonghua, the leader of the group, charging over noisily with 9 people. We actually let you enter the city without a hitch. The leader glared at Arbor's group. Otherwise, what are you going to do? Eldest young Sir Qin tapped the folding fan in his hand. You're not so naive as to think that we're still waiting in line outside the city, right? You. What exactly do you want to say? Situ-E asked the leader curiously. Zhonghua. Zhonghua. City Lord Sun hastily rushed over upon receiving the news and looked awkwardly at his eldest nephew. Zhonghua, don't be rude to His Highness the Crown Prince's group. Leader Zhonghua was taken aback, and his gaze shot towards Mo Lien's group again. It turned out that the group from the Mo Kingdom capital really had such a powerful background. However, he was unable to swallow his previous indignation. Uncle. I didn't want to say it at first, but the team that the Crown Prince brought was truly too much. Ignoring the incessant looks that his uncle, City Lord Sun, was sending him, Leader Zhonghua rambled on endlessly. Uncle, you don't know how infuriating they are. Not only did they plunder all of Jiaozhong Base's rations, but they didn't bring us along with them. They actually didn't bring us along on the return trip and left us at Jiaozhong Base. We were almost besieged by hundreds of zombies. Didn't your Rice City team head to Jiaozhong Base for a cleanup mission? Arbor interrupted him and said indifferently, if you can't even clean up several hundred zombies, then what are you going to do? Do you want to take a stroll? You. The leader was enraged. Zhonghua. City Lord Sun reprimanded. Don't be rude in front of the Crown Princess. You brought more than 200 people out, but less than 10 have returned. Are the lives of your teammates not worth their lives? Arbor glanced indifferently at Callie, who was behind the leader. Grab her. Ah. What do you want to do? What do you want to do? Two black-clothed shadow guards immediately appeared next to Callie and pinned her arms behind her back. Deal with her. No, you can't deal with me. What right do you have to punish me? Carly widened her eyes in horror and kept struggling in the hands of the two secret guards. You're talking about qualifications with me when your infection period will end in less than 4 hours and you're about to mutate? Xiao Mu looked at her exasperatedly. Then, he turned to look at Zhonghua. I think you need treatment for your brain. You brought something that could explode at any time back to the city and placed it in the city lord's mansion. Do you want Rice City to become the second Jiaozhong base? No, that's not true. Zhonghua was a little anxious. He turned to look at City Lord Sun's incredulous eyes and hurriedly explained, Uncle, don't listen to her nonsense. She doesn't know anything. As for Carly's injuries, we've already contained them. With Ni Shang around, there won't be any problems. The foolish girl named Ni Shang bit her finger as she smiled at Duan Yu. Her smile made Duan Yu's hair stand on end, and he shrank back into the group. Are you stupid? There won't be any problems. Then why did that man in your group suddenly jump out to bite people and mutate? Liang Qingqing couldn't bear it any longer and bellowed at Zhonghua. Zhonghua, you can't be that muddle-headed, right? City Lord Sun looked at Carly in horror and involuntarily shrank back. Uncle, nothing will happen at all right? Zhonghua retorted impatiently. Chapter 1344. Capture them all. Mo Lian's frigid words stupefied the remaining members of Rice City's team. Take them all out for inspection. If there are any problems, deal with them on the spot. Prince Mo's icy voice caused the hearts of the Rice City team members to tremble violently as they felt a chill in their bones. And you? The Crown Prince turned around and pointed at City Lord Sun, who was trembling incessantly like a quail. Appointing people based on nepotism. Don't you know how much this nephew of yours is worth? You actually let him be the leader of Rice City's team and lead a group of people to their deaths. City Lord Sun only felt that misfortune was upon him, and his body went limp as he knelt on the ground with a thud. He repeatedly begged for mercy, Your Highness, please quell your anger. From now on, you are no longer the city lord of Rice City's fortifications. Immediately send people to take over all matters here and complete them by today. Yes. Hui Feng bowed and immediately strode out the door, leading people to take care of these matters. City Lord Sun collapsed on the ground, dumbstruck. Everything had been fine up until just now. It was over. Everything was over. His nephew, Zhonghua, was also completely stupefied at this moment. When he came to his senses, it was as if he had been injected with chicken blood, and he immediately started making a fuss and yelling, You can't do this, you can't. What does this have to do with my uncle? You are using public office to avenge private wrongs. Eldest young Sir Qin slapped Captain Zhong Hua's head with his fan and winked at him with a smile. Do I need to use public office to avenge private wrongs against you? He shook his head and walked out, thinking that this fellow's brain was seriously lacking. The farce was quickly dealt with. The new city lord who replaced City Lord's son was a swift and decisive character, and he was currently furiously dealing with the mess left behind by his predecessor. It was fine if he didn't deal with it, but once he did, he got a shock. The Crown Prince's prophecy really came true. This city lord's son truly appointed people based on nepotism. The family's 7 aunts and 8 aunts who had been separated by 8 lifetimes had more or less basked in city lord's son's glory. There were many drawbacks, but the new city lord was quite nimble. With the Crown Prince holding the fort, the new city lord waved his machete and cut the Gordian knot. Mo Lien and her group, who had originally planned to leave this afternoon, were delayed for an entire night because of the replacement of Rice City's city lord. On the second day, everyone bade farewell to Rice City and flew to the Mo Kingdom capital, Guanlan City. Moreover, under the leadership of the various city lords, the various fortifications of the entire Mo Kingdom capital, large and small, also began to strictly guard and reconstruct the water region. While flying high in the sky, he saw that the nearest water vein had completely turned black. Arbor's heart skipped a beat. If Xiao Shui woke up, he could try to improve the water quality here. But now that for the time being, there was nothing he could do. 3 days later, everyone returned to the Mo Kingdom capital uneventfully and smoothly. The Crown Prince's horse did not stop to rest. Upon returning to the Mo Kingdom capital, the first thing he did was to order people to surround the Fan residence. The crime was to assassinate the Crown Prince in Jiaozhong base. This was a very serious crime. The entire Fan clan was greatly shaken, and they were surrounded by the Dragon Saliva Guards overnight. Not even a fly could escape. The captain of the Dragon Saliva Guard, Yu Xiu, personally led a team into the Fan clan to search for Fan Chioha. However, Fan Chioha had long fled without a trace with Fan Gu. Family head Fan wanted to cry but had no tears to shed as he dealt with the huge mess Fan Chioha left behind. All day long, he begged people to help him mediate. He sent out many good things, but the results were minimal. Chapter 1345. When Arbor returned home, Wei Ziqin nagged him a lot. She said that neither of them was reliable. The wedding was just a few days away, but he was still nowhere to be seen. It made her anxious and angry. Arbor returned home at night. Except for Qiao Zhongbang and his wife, no one else was alerted. The next morning, when the family was having breakfast, second uncle, Xiao Hu, and Xiao Mu found out that she was back. This was the first time Arbor saw second Aunt Ren after second uncle's wedding. She looked 24 or 25 years old. She looked smart and capable, and she walked with the wind. This is Jojo. Second uncle had a smile on his face. It seemed that he had been living well these days. Ren stepped forward, took Arbor's hand, and gave him a greeting gift. Then, she smiled and exchanged greetings with Arbor. Only then did the family sit down and have breakfast happily. These days, Ren had adapted to the rich breakfast of Qiao Mu. In addition to white porridge, red bean porridge, and meat buns, there were also 4 kinds of pastries for breakfast today. The Qiao family didn't have so many rigid rules when eating. The family chatted as they ate, just like an ordinary family. This made Ren like the atmosphere of this family very much. Eldest uncle and sister-in-law were kind people. Her husband was a few years older than her and was considerate and honest. After getting along with her stepson these days, they also got along very well. Therefore, Ren really had nothing to be dissatisfied with. She was even very grateful to her mother for having a good eye and choosing such a good family for her. Sister-in-law, Jojo's wedding is just a few days away. Sister-in-law, you're very busy. Remember to ask me for help. Although I haven't been married for long, I can still help with some chores. Ren said with a smile. Okay. I'm really busy these days. It's best if you can help me. Wei Ziqin nodded happily. She now saw that this sister-in-law was good in every aspect and couldn't find any fault with her. Madame Ren happily agreed. Xiao Lin stirred the red bean congee in her bowl with a spoon and muttered softly, "Big sister, you'll be living in the palace from now on. I don't know how long it will be before we meet again." Xiao Zhongbang couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth when he heard this. Ahem, other than the period when your sister is cultivating in seclusion, when else can she be idle at home? Xiao Lin thought about it and agreed. Her little face relaxed as she giggled and said, "Elder sister, then I'll go to the palace to play with you every few days." Arbor nodded. Wei Ziqin couldn't help but laugh. You're still looking for your sister every few days. Even if your sister doesn't find you annoying, your brother-in-law will. Xiao Lin pursed her lips. I'm looking for my sister. Why would my brother-in-law be annoyed? When the time comes, we can just ask my brother-in-law for a pass. We don't need him to lead the way. Wei Ziqin was both amused and annoyed as she poked her daughter's forehead. Arbor looked at the mother and daughter pair with a faint smile in her eyes. In the past few days, did Zhou Yuan's family come to cause trouble again? Arbor asked absent-mindedly. Xiao Zhongbang shook his head. They came the day after you left. After I sent people to chase them out, they never came again. Hey, but speaking of which, Jojo, do you still remember the little fatty from the richest family in our village, Zhou Tao? Arbor stared blankly. Father, you saw him? Of course. Xiao Zhongbang sighed when he mentioned this. He's now a servant of Zhou Yuan's family. I even saw him a few days ago. Wei Ziqin sighed. He's as skinny as a monkey. Chapter 1346. He's like a monkey. He's so skinny that it's scary. He was such a fat baby back then. Wei Ziqin shook her head. Arbor didn't think too much about it. Zhou Tao was already a thing of the past. She took revenge on him for kicking her down the slope when she was young. A few days after her rebirth. If her father hadn't mentioned him, she would have forgotten about this person. She remembered that when she was on the way from Shizhou City to the capital, she had encountered this person who had gone crazy from hunger and raised his knife to kill people. He was a sedan bearer before, and now he was a servant. It seemed like his life hadn't been easy. However, he was considered smart to be able to survive until now as a normal person in this chaotic world. Now that she heard his name, he was just a stranger to her. She didn't feel sad or happy, and her emotions didn't fluctuate. After the meal, Arbor returned to her room. The Ministry of Rites had sent people to deliver wedding clothes and jewelry, and she needed to try them on one by one. However, after trying them on for a short while, the young lady kicked off her shoes and lazily went back to bed. When Xiaoyao entered the room and saw her little crown princess' lazy appearance, she couldn't help but be amused and annoyed at the same time. Crown princess, you've only tried on a few pieces of jewelry. Why are you lying down already? Have you tried on the wedding clothes? I've tried them. Arbor scrambled up from the bed and looked at her with bright eyes. Xiaoyao, if you marry my brother Xiaohu, you'll be my sister-in-law in the future. Xiaoyao glared at her with a red face. Nonsense. How is it nonsense? The little crown princess pursed her lips. How about this, we'll first get used to how we address each other from now on. I'll call you eldest sister-in-law. How about you call me eldest sister-in-law? Xiaoyao was so embarrassed that her face burned. She rolled her eyes at her, took the wedding dress and walked out. Crown princess, you've lost a lot of weight recently. I'll ask them to change the waist of this wedding dress. With just a few words, Xiao Yao, the chatterbox, was scared away. Arbor cheered and lay down on the bed. His little hands and feet spread out, and he didn't move at all. In reality, he was talking to the little tree in his mind. Master, Master, do you want to take a bone forging pill now? I spent a lot of effort to get it from the main planet. In 3 days, I guarantee that your body's toughness will reach a whole new level. As if I'd believe you. Arbor shook his head. You said 3 days, so it's definitely more than 3 days. I'm getting married in 4 days. We can't allow anything to go wrong. If she ate the bone forging pill now, if she didn't finish forging on the day of the wedding, wouldn't she be in trouble? Could it be that he still had to carry her out of seclusion, that she couldn't care less about the dignity of the royal family? She didn't want her little face anymore. There was no need to rush. She could wait for a while before forging. The little tree said, Hey, Master, what if someone comes to make trouble on the day of the wedding? Once you finish forging your body, you'll have a higher chance of winning. Forge now. If the little tree was in front of her now, she would definitely give it a few slaps on the head. She was going to get married, not to fight. Besides, the crown prince wasn't just for show. Who would dare to make trouble at the crown prince's wedding? Alright, don't encourage me to do something unreliable. Arbor made the final decision. Let me tell you. I don't have much, but my main strength is that I'm very reliable. The little tree. Are you sure that's your strength? You scammer, go do what you're supposed to do. Don't bother me. Arbor was lazing on the bed and waved his arm in disdain. Chapter 1347. She suddenly thought of something. Before the sapling retreated, Arbor asked, Where's the egg? How has it been these few days? Not too comfortable. Speaking of this, the sapling was a little angry. She didn't know where that egg came from, but it was always like a big boss. The moment it came, it occupied the frigid pool and didn't let anyone in except for that baboon. The egg enslaved me. The sapling was indignant. He made me build a fence around the frigid pool for him. He even hung a sign called Phoenix Garden or something. Arbor was speechless. Why did it sound like a brothel? The frigid pool is useful to him. Of course it's useful. The spiritual energy in the pool is dense, and I suspect that black spirit jade might be buried there. Xiao Mu scrambled up from the bed. Are you serious? Otherwise, why would he be so eager to occupy the frigid pool these few days? And not let anyone in? It made sense. Arbor felt that the sapling's analysis was right. She had previously suspected that there might be another world under the pool. Otherwise, where did the frigid star sand come from? Master, go in and kick the egg out now. Forget it. Arbor collapsed back onto the bed. Let him stay for a while, he's also pitiful. After following her for so long, he was still just an egg. Are little water, little earth, and little snake awake? No, the sapling said angrily. When his companions woke up, the first thing he would do was to get them to beat up the egg, the sapling thought secretly. An egg actually made his little master's heart soften. This wasn't a good sign. Master, Master, do you like the egg more than Chucho? The sapling asked pitifully. No. Arbor stiffly replied, Don't think too much. She liked big and fierce beasts like the chestnut, and she also liked the snow leopard that she summoned for Mo Lien. But what was the use of liking them? They weren't hers. She only had cute things by her side. So angry. She didn't want to talk to Little Tree anymore. She turned over and rolled herself into the quilt, planning to have a good afternoon nap. However, the Little Tree was still nagging. Master Silver, has your talisman master level increased? Yes, I'm a yellow rank great symbol master now. Arbor was somewhat happy when he thought of this. Occasionally, she would wonder where the golden talisman jade tome that changed her life came from. She hugged the blanket and rolled around. I'm going to sleep. Don't disturb me. Master Silver, does that mean you can draw yellow-level talismans? Of course, let me tell you. Arbor suddenly slapped his little head. Cho, I drew a god-inviting talisman, but I've never used it before. Go ahead and use it. Cho simply ran out of Paradise Planet and turned into a little tray ant, squatting on her shoulder. Master, this god-inviting talisman sounds really powerful. I also feel that it should be quite impressive. Xiao Mu responded uncertainly. With a flick of her finger, an ebony talisman appeared in her hand. With a light swipe of her finger, she activated the talisman. An invisible talisman energy spread out and burst into her body. The two of them widened their round eyes and held their breaths as they waited. 5 minutes later, there was nothing. 15 minutes later, there was still nothing. The two of them stared at each other with their watery eyes. It's okay, Master. Maybe the Supremes are busy right now and don't have time to come to the lower star sector to play. Ha! Don't be discouraged, Master. Arbor. Master invites you to the living room. Chapter 1348. Arbor's heart ached at the thought of wasting a deity-inviting talisman that she painstakingly drew. She walked out listlessly and grumpily asked, "Who's here?" "It's the Mu family's 7th master." "It's him again." Anger surfaced in Arbor's eyes. She hadn't even had the time to settle the score with him, yet he came running here on his own. There was a path to heaven, but he refused to take it and insisted on barging into hell. Kill him. A little poisonous person in Jojo's heart flaunted her prowess and hooted. She slammed the door shut behind her with a bang. Inside Miss Chiao's boudoir, a warm ray of sunlight slowly flowed onto the dressing table. As the little fellow walked, the more she thought about it, the angrier she became. This talisman patrician family simply had a grudge with her in her past life. Nothing good would come out of running into them. That Fan Gu was clearly from their family. Otherwise, how could she possibly have something like a teleportation talisman matrix? So infuriating. The Mu family's 7th master actually dared to appear in front of her after doing such a vicious thing. The angry little thing entered the living room with its defensive barrier activated, and everyone was stunned by its sudden appearance. Mu Jingrue's eyes flickered. "Jojo, what are you doing? I'm going to beat you to death." The little fellow extended her hand, and a handful of attack talismans appeared in her palm. "Come out." She couldn't fight in the living room and break the furniture. "You." Mu Jingrue's lackey, Old Bai, angrily looked at Arbor. "Absolutely impudent." "Jojo." Xiao Zhongbang also called out to his daughter rather awkwardly. "Come back. Don't make a scene." "What? You dare to do it but don't dare to admit it." Arbor looked up and waved at Mu Jingrue. "Come out." "What did I do?" Mu Jingrue calmly walked out of the Qiao family's main hall and arrived at a small empty space in front of the door. "You harbored a grudge against me when I refused to return to the Mu family with you last time. I went to Jiaozhong base to carry out a mission, and you sent someone to kill me. Do you have proof?" Mu Jingrue raised his brows and looked at her with a spurious smile. "Does the teleportation array count as evidence?" "That middle-aged woman called Fan Gu has the teleportation glyph formation of your divine land's Mu family." Arbor sneered. "Impossible." Mu Jingrue stubbornly shook his head. "Not everyone has a transportation talisman matrix. Even in our divine province's Mu family, there are only a few people who can obtain a transportation talisman matrix. Including you." Arbor gave him a cold look. Senior White was puzzled as he listened from the side, and after a long time, he finally understood. He was immediately angered to the point of stomping his feet and jumping up as he roared furiously. "You little bastard, are you doubting our seventh master? Arbor glanced at him and stomped on the ground as well. However, her stomp caused the stone slabs on the ground to roll up and line up into a long line, aiming for Lao Bai's face. Old White. Mu Jingrue's expression froze. He immediately threw out 24 defensive jade talismans that surrounded Old White. Arbor stuck a teleportation talisman on himself. Damn it, he actually teleported to the back of the house in an instant. Everyone stared dumbfoundedly as she jumped out from behind the house. She took out a ferrule from her conscience and swung it at Mu Jingrue's head. Mu Jingrue couldn't help but laugh bitterly. This child's prejudice against him was gradually deepening. He didn't even know how to properly communicate with her anymore. Spiritual power trembled around him, and he immediately repelled the little fellow's ferrule. Chapter 1349. This fellow only used a bit of spiritual energy to send her ruler flying. Arbor could only twist her body in midair and tightly grab onto her ruler. Her toes lightly tapped the air as she flipped and landed in front of Mu Jingrue. Jojo, listen to me, alright? Mu Jingrue helplessly lowered his voice. You're long-winded. Arbor impatiently glared at him and took a step back. Don't come to my house again in the future. Seeing you guys annoys me to death. You darn girl, how can you not know what's good for you? Old Bai was also enraged. Do you think we have to shave off our heads to invite you home? We're doing this for your own good. Don't forget that your surname is Mu. You're a child of the Mu family of the Divine Continent. For my own good, for my own good. Whether or not they're sincerely doing this for my own good, I can tell from their eyes. These two big liars still want to deceive me. Scram! Arbor kicked straight at Old Bai's mouth. In his fury, Old Bai crossed his arms in front of him to protect himself. Xiao Mu's kick landed on his bulging arm, and her feet were frozen in place by the spiritual energy he was emitting. It was as if her feet were glued to his arm, and she was unable to pull them off for a while. Arbor angrily glared with her round eyes. She fished out a handful of poisonous powder from her sleeve and was about to scatter it to smoke the old man. Old Bai's eyes suddenly flashed, and he abruptly pushed her outwards. Old Bai! Mu Jingrue cried out in alarm. Old Bai actually used 70% of his strength to repel Jojo. This was bad. Arbor was pushed and jolted by this old fellow's spiritual energy. She hastily added 3 more water spiritual barriers outside her protective barrier. Even so, she still felt the chi and blood in her chest churning from the spiritual energy rushing at her. Her small body had long been uncontrollably sent flying by Old Bai. Her back crashed straight into a tree in the courtyard, and the tree immediately bent and fell to the ground with a crack. This old fellow was really quite strong. Looking at the situation, his great spiritual master rank was probably above the middle-aged woman, Fan Gu. Stinky girl, you need to know that there's always someone better out there. Don't be a frog in a well and be ignorant. Senior White laughed coldly and said, our divine prefecture's Mu clan is willing to take you back, yet you actually dare to make all sorts of excuses. Why don't you think about the consequences? If you really offend the Mu family of the divine land, what do you think your adoptive parents will do? Old White. Mu Jingrue was anxious to interrupt Old Bai's speech, but Old Bai waved his hand and interrupted him instead. Seventh Master, this little girl has been spoiled rotten. She clearly doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Just treat it as me advising her on behalf of her biological parents. As soon as he finished speaking, the faces of Qiao Zhongbang and his wife changed. The Mu family of Shenzhou has gone too far. Mu Jingrue hurriedly cupped his hands at Qiao Zhongbang and his wife. Please don't be angry. Jojo has some misunderstandings about our Mu family right now. I hope that you can help persuade her. Boom! A wooden vine as thick as the mouth of a bull fiercely smashed next to Old Bai's feet. Old Bai was startled. He looked up and saw a figure gliding across the sky, suddenly arriving in front of him. The spirit-binding rope drilled out from under his sleeves and climbed up Old Bai's hands, swiftly tying them around his tanned wrists. Arbor tugged on the rope from the other end, and Old Bai's wrists were suddenly firmly bound by the spirit-binding rope. He hurriedly clapped his hands, trying to break free from the rope. Chapter 1350. However, the spirit-binding rope could even bind that guy Duanyu, let alone Old Bai, who was merely a great spiritual cultivator. Old Bai was caught by the spirit-binding rope, and he angrily kicked his leg toward Arbor. Arbor grabbed the rope and also extended a leg, colliding with the old fellow's leg with a bang. Fuck, even his bones hurt from the collision. Xiao Mu started to regret it again. If she had not listened to the deceitful tree and consumed the bone-forging pill, perhaps her body's toughness would have greatly increased, and it would not have been so strenuous when fighting Old Bai. Bang! Bang, bang! The two people swept their legs several times in succession. After a dozen or so kicks, our dear Xiao Mu abruptly retracted her small leg and grimaced in pain as she rubbed her bruised leg. Just as she angrily shook her leg and bent down to rub her aching leg, she suddenly felt a warm, gentle feeling. Suddenly, he could clearly feel a trace of warm air flowing under his skin. Wherever it passed, the pain of his broken bones seemed to ease a lot. She couldn't help but be taken aback. While she was in a daze, Old Bai, whose hands were bound, had already leaped in front of her. His hands clenched into large fists and smashed toward her head. If this hit landed, Arbor would definitely vomit blood and collapse to the ground. This old fellow truly acted quickly and viciously. Mu Jingrui quickly flew up to stop him. Old Bai. Stop right there. Arbor threw out 60 defensive talismans around his body, forming a defensive talisman array. Old Bai's descending fist was blocked by Arbor's talisman array, so it didn't actually land on her head. But even so, Xiao Zhongbang and Wei Ziqin, who were watching from the side, felt very alarmed. Their hearts were about to jump out of their chests along with their daughter's every move. Before Xiao Zhongbang could shout for help, several black figures landed beside them like specters. Xiao Zhongbang took a closer look, and his heart calmed down slightly. These young men should be the secret guards that the crown prince left for his daughter. Seeing them now, Xiao Zhongbang and his wife felt a little relieved. You just used my parents to threaten me, didn't you? Arbor stared coldly at the white-haired old man in front of him, his eyes filled with an eerie chill. I'm not threatening you, the white-haired elder said coldly. I'm just reminding you out of goodwill. After all, the Mu clan of the Divine Prefecture isn't something that you commoners from the lower star fields can resist. Arbor sneered, who are you trying to fool? If you people from the upper 3 provinces want to come to Seacombe Planet, you'll have to take some unorthodox paths. It's simply impossible to teleport on a large scale. Otherwise, the heavenly Tao will be the first to not let you off. Arbor said coldly. Damned girl, you know quite a lot. Old Bai rolled his eyes and said coldly, you even know about the heavenly Tao. Arbor snorted and suddenly flipped open his palm. Green vines spread out from one side of his palm, and water spirits sizzled out from the other side. He threw 2 types of spiritual energy at Old Bai at the same time. Old Bai was a little bewildered. His hands were tied, so it was inconvenient for him to fight. He could only raise his leg and sweep it forcefully in the air. The green vine in Xiao Mu's hand immediately coiled around one of Old White's legs. Abruptly exerting force, Old White's leg was forced to fall forward, and a crisp crack resounded. The gazes of everyone present became strange as they looked at Senior White. Old Bai's face flushed red. Chapter 1351. This was his pants splitting open at the back of his butt. Old Bai's face flushed bright red, and his lips trembled in anger. He stammered for a long time without saying a word, but his gaze toward Arbor became increasingly gloomy. Just as Old Bai was about to launch an attack, Xiao Mu kicked out first, landing on his left arm. Her body shot up, and she twisted the spirit binding rope to hold on to both his hands as she stepped onto Old Bai's shoulders in an instant. Old Bai helplessly raised his hands high, his face turning even more purple and black. You guys probably don't know one thing. Ever since you guys came to find me last time, as a precaution, I secretly ordered people to destroy all the hidden special passageways or things like spatial transfer talisman matrices in the Mo Kingdom capital. Wantonly destroying these passageways meant one thing: people from the middle 6 prefectures or the upper 3 provinces could no longer visit the Mo Kingdom capital as they pleased. Once those special passageways were destroyed, it would be very difficult to construct another one within several years. As for the spatial talisman matrices, that was even easier to handle. She had already thought of a way to get it done once and for all. Only she and Mo Lien knew about this matter. Even Duan Yu and the others were unaware. Mu Jingrui's pupils involuntarily contracted when he heard this. Was it like that? This girl could actually be so ruthless and terrifyingly meticulous. Reportedly, the advancement passageway recognized by heavenly law opens once every 10 years. I think you guys can only return through that normal passageway. Arbor sneered. However, you shouldn't have to wait too long. At most, it should be 3 months. Of course, you guys can also take advantage of this passageway that opens once every 10 years to bring more people to our Seacombe planet. Arbor stood on that old man's shoulder and expressionlessly gazed at Mu Jingrui. His voice was bone-chilling ice from the netherworld. The prerequisite is that you can hide it from heavenly law. 10 years. Only 10 years' time. I will let all of you clearly know. There is no distinction between upper, middle, and lower. When I step onto the divine province, it will be the day you demons and monsters pay the price in blood. Mu Jingrui's pupils contracted fiercely. He didn't know what kind of feelings he was currently feeling. The young lady before him stood high above on Senior White's shoulder, and she looked at them with an icy cold gaze that was arrogant and indifferent. It caused him to have the indescribable feeling that everyone seemed to be insignificant in her eyes at this moment. He suddenly realized that perhaps it was because of his recklessness that the little girl in front of him was getting further and further away from the Mu family of the Divine Land. 10 years was enough to stir up a storm. Perhaps, she didn't even need 10 years. White suddenly sneered, "Ignorant brat, don't be so arrogant. 10 years. Not to mention 10 years. You won't even have 10 minutes. He had decided to kill her. This little girl was too antisocial and hard to control. This kind of girl, no matter how high her talent was, it was impossible for her family to use her. He believed that the old patriarch would definitely understand his painstaking efforts. If such a person existed, it would be a threat to the eldest miss and eldest young master. With this girl's temperament, she would definitely not be willing to be inferior to others. What a pity. A little prodigy was about to lose her life here. A person's life was so short. The path of growth was filled with thorns and loneliness. How pitiful. Her life had already reached its end. Senior White's eyes darkened as he looked up. Goodbye, little girl. You won't have a tomorrow. Chapter 1352. You can't kill me. A cold glint appeared in Arbor's apathetic eyes. When Old Bai's entire body erupted with terrifying spiritual energy, sparkling and translucent snowflakes burst forth from her fingers and collided with the spiritual energy on his body. After several consecutive explosions, Mu Jingrui and the others were isolated outside. Try and see if I can kill you. Old Bai roared angrily. His hands tightened, but he still couldn't break free from the spirit-binding rope. He couldn't help but fly into a rage out of humiliation, hating the lousy rope in his hands. Ha! Old Bai roared angrily and fiercely stomped on the ground. A thin layer of spiritual armor covered his chest. Following that, the muscles all over his body bulged, and his spiritual energy surged inch by inch. Mu Jingrui was shocked and madly rushed to his side. "Old Bai. Stop it. I won't allow you to harm my niece." However, at this very moment, the defensive barrier around Old Bai had already frozen the surrounding air, directly creating a spiritual energy barrier in the small plaza outside the main hall. No matter how Mu Jingrui, Lightning, and the others frantically tried to destroy this spiritual energy barrier, it was to no avail. "Die." The old man shook his shoulders, only to see the girl's figure floating in front of him. Her expression was grave as she covered her body with several layers of water spirit barriers. Was it useful? Old Bai couldn't help but sneer. He proudly shouted, "Today, let me teach you what the true difference in strength is." In an instant, a huge wave of spiritual energy surged toward Arbor's head. Xiao Zhongbang and his wife used their feeble strength to pound the defensive barrier constructed from powerful spiritual energy. This tiny amount of strength was like an ant trying to shake a tree. It didn't budge in the slightest. Inside the defensive barrier, the huge wave of spiritual energy formed a huge transparent palm. It blotted out the sky as it slammed down toward Arbor's head. Mu Jingrui rapidly consumed the talismans in his hand, intending to break the old man's defensive barrier. Unfortunately, Old Bai's strength was on par with his, and their realms and cultivations were similar. He couldn't break through the barrier at all. Under this palm, Jojo was about to be smashed into meat paste. A fat squirrel the size of a small mountain suddenly blocked in front of Arbor. Before the white squirrel could slap it with its tail, the sky was filled with peach blossoms. They swirled and danced gently, landing on the heads of everyone present. Their clothes were stained with peach blossoms. Arbor didn't understand what was going on. He wiped the peach blossom petals on his little head and looked up at the sky. Everything was going well, so why was there a peach blossom rain out of nowhere? Could it be that the little white squirrel was playing on the peach blossom tree on Paradise Planet and brought it out when it came out? However, there was no end to the peach blossom rain. How could the white squirrel bring out so many peach blossom petals? The white squirrel Chiochio looked innocently at its little master. It looked up at the sky with its master, and a red dot suddenly appeared in its eyes. As the red dots continued to fall, the figure gradually revealed itself. Under the sky full of peach blossoms, a person in a red robe fluttered in the wind. Holding a pink peach blossom umbrella that only covered one person, she floated down from the sky. Pink peach blossoms umbrella. Right, it was this kind of thing that made people sick of looking at it that appeared in Xiao Mu's eyes. That person turned around. His androgynous little face was so beautiful that it was almost impeccable. Bang! He pointed a finger in the distance. Old Bai, who was originally immensely pleased with himself, suddenly flushed red. Chapter 1353. How is this possible? Lao Bai watched in horror as the spiritual energy he sent out bounced back and instantly circled around him. His body also rapidly expanded in the next moment, as if Lao Bai's eyes widened in shock. Why, he couldn't say a single word. Spiritual energy crazily surged in his Dantian's mystic domain, but it was still of no use. At this moment, Lao Bai already couldn't care less about the heavenly Tao. At this moment, he had already exploded with his cultivation as a peak level, 11 great spiritual master, wanting to resist. However, it was of no use. In the end, all that was left in his eyes was peach blossoms. Bang! Lao Bai suddenly self-destructed in front of everyone, and all the energy was suppressed within the defensive barrier he had set up. Several loud tremors sounded in succession, startling everyone in the residence and causing them to run in this direction. The people outside the defensive barrier were also shocked by this sudden self-destruction. They all stared dumbfoundedly at Lao Bai's miserable appearance. Turned into scattered ashes. This was the true difference in strength. Arbor blinked and turned her head to look at the red-robed man who was holding a pink peach blossom umbrella and standing at the side with a smile. His figure was slender and beautiful. He really had an appearance that could overturn a city with a smile. He wasn't any worse than her Emolien. An illusion. It must be an illusion. How could there be someone in this world who could kill a great spiritual master with just a finger? She couldn't do it to such an outrageous extent. Xiao Mu secretly twisted her small arm lightly. Immediately, she didn't feel any pain. She became more and more convinced that everything in front of her was an illusion. She walked out of the defensive barrier. The man with the pink peach blossom umbrella followed her gaze and blinked. Why did he feel like he was being ignored? That old ghost was already dead, and the defensive barrier he had set up also disappeared. Xiao Mu smoothly walked out of that defensive boundary, and as soon as she walked out, Wei Ziqin hugged her and bawled her eyes out. Just now, it was really too dangerous. Wei Ziqin's heart almost jumped out. She thought that she might lose her daughter forever. Arbor expressionlessly patted his mother's back to comfort her. He looked up at Mu Jingrui, who was looking at him with a complicated expression, and coldly said, "You're still not leaving?" Mu Jingrui looked at her with a complicated expression and nodded. "I'll leave now." He was too ashamed to stay here any longer. The men he had brought with him had disregarded his orders and tried to kill his little niece. He was speechless. "Jojo, I hope you'll reconsider. There's one thing that old Bai is right about. Having a powerful clan will definitely be beneficial to your future. Do you think I need that?" Arbor glanced at him coldly. Mu Jingrui couldn't help feeling bitter. That's right, a young genius who could draw the god-inviting talisman and invite the immortal venerable, why would he care if others supported him or not? It was not necessarily a good thing that his little niece bore a grudge against the Mu family of the Divine Land. Lao Bai was too rash in dealing with matters. "Jojo, I'll investigate the spatial talisman matrix you mentioned after I return. If I find out that it's really related to our Mu family, I'll definitely ferret that person out and hand him over to you for punishment." "I hope you'll do as you say." Arbor glanced at him indifferently, not holding much hope in his heart. Chapter 1354. Because she was very clear that this person had concealed himself deeply from her previous life to this one. Perhaps Mu Jingrui alone could not deal with him. Arbor shook her head and turned to look at her sobbing mother, using a handkerchief to wipe her tears. "Mom," she said softly, "when I was in Jiaozhong base, I was chased by a group of people of unknown origins. At that time, I was besieged by more than a dozen people, and the situation was even more dangerous than it is now. I suspect that this pursuit has something to do with my birth." Arbor said mildly, looking at her mother with a sincere gaze. "Mom, many times, it's not that the enemy will let us off if we take a step back. Mom, they don't want me to live well. They don't want me to appear in the divine mainland one day. They want my life. They want me to suffer for the rest of my life by every means possible. Mother, they're controlling me like a marionette, trying to ruin my life." Arbor hugged her mother's shoulders and stared straight at her. "I can't retreat, you know. I have nowhere to retreat. I can only continue to survive by continuously fighting and advancing. Mom, don't be sad, because I'm already very clear that this is my life. From the moment I was born, this identity of the Mu family's daughter has not brought me any glory or brilliance, but indelible pain and disaster. Mom. Even so, you still want to maintain your silence and not tell me anything?" Everyone stared at her in a daze. Especially second Uncle Qiao, brother Xiao Hu, Xiao Lin, and the others. They were baffled and stared blankly at the girl in front of them. Jojo? What was Jojo talking about? What identity of the Mu family's daughter? Why was it that when her words were separated, they could understand each word, but when they were put together, they could not understand anything? Wei Ziqin hugged her and cried bitterly, her expression carrying a trace of remorse. She did not know that things would be so serious and that her daughter would have such a difficult life. "Child, why come with me, come with me?" Wei Ziqin suddenly stood up, pulled her little hand, and dragged her to the rear courtyard. "Father, what's going on?" Zhou looked at his father, Xiao Zhongbang, in shock. Xiao Zhongbang sighed. "Come with me to the hall. It's a long story." Everyone ran away, leaving behind only the flowers on the ground, as well as that it was a slender man holding a pink peach blossom umbrella. Has this venerable one been completely ignored by everyone? A certain person muttered to himself before his figure disappeared from the courtyard. It was as if he didn't exist in everyone's eyes. When had his sense of existence become so weak? Arbor silently followed his mother all the way to the back of the ancestral hall. Pushing open the heavy door of the ancestral hall, Wei Ziqin took her little hand and walked into the main entrance of the ancestral hall. They walked around to a small room in the back hall. Xiao Mu saw that there was only a lone memorial tablet erected there, and there was even a piece of cloth covering it. "Kneel down, Jojo," Wei Ziqin said sternly. Arbor knelt down as instructed, silently kneeling in front of the memorial tablet. For a long time, mother and daughter did not speak. "Actually, you already have the answer in your heart, don't you, child?" Wei Ziqin sighed deeply. "You're such a smart child. You've already guessed it, haven't you?" Arbor did not speak, only staring straight at the cloth, as if trying to see through it to the name inside. Chapter 1355. Wei Ziqin lifted her hand to take down the cloth. Arbor's gaze then focused on the three large characters carved on the memorial tablet, Long Chuyun. It really was Long Chuyun. Arbor only felt a slight sourness in her little nose, and her eyes were filled with indescribable sadness. However, her gaze remained cold and still as she stared at the memorial tablet, not moving at all for a long time. She finally understood why her chest swelled uncomfortably and was filled with a strange sense of sorrow when she first saw the skeleton in the fiery red clothes in the land of inheritance. It turned out that it was actually the first time they met. 15 years. They didn't know each other when they met. She was the teacher who imparted the elixir inheritance to her, as well as her biological mother. "Miss told me that the injuries in her body originally weren't enough to support giving birth to you," Wei Ziqin said in a choked voice. "She used a very extreme method to give birth to you. So her body was even weaker than before. And at this time, her enemies came looking for her again. She had no choice but to entrust you to me. At that time, your father and I weren't married yet." Wei Ziqin thought of the past, only feeling that it was still vivid in her mind, but things had already changed. "Your father didn't despise us, mother and daughter. We met by chance in town." Wei Ziqin laughed bitterly. "After that, your father brought us mother and daughter back to Quoto village. Your grandmother always had a thorn in her heart, feeling that it was mother who did something wrong to your father, and that's why she had you. Jojo. Your biological mother called you that back then. So from the beginning, Dad and Mom had always called her Jojo. At first, she thought that because she was the eldest, Dad and Mom just called Jojo Jojo out of habit. Only now did she know that it was because Dad and Mom knew that she was called Mu Qiao from beginning to end. Her nickname was indeed Jojo. Arbor knelt there without moving an inch. When Wei Ziqin saw this, her heart clenched. She reached out and stuffed half of the jade pendant with a red string into her daughter's hand. She hugged her daughter and cried, "Take it, okay? Jojo, this is what your birth mother left behind. You can blame anyone but her." Mother recognized the ring on your finger. Wei Ziqin looked up at the expressionless Arbor and said, "It's really the nature of mother and daughter. No matter how far apart they were, no matter how long they were separated. You guys just reunited without any reason, didn't you? So, when you heard that I knew how to refine pills, you were so happy that you opened the ancestral hall, saying that you were going to pay respects to the ancestors. Actually, you're just going to tell her that I've also become an alchemist. In the future, I will also be like her and become an alchemy grandmaster. Wei Ziqin nodded with tears in her eyes. Mother, do you know who her enemy is? Who has been trying to take her life? Wei Ziqin shook her head. Mother isn't lying to you. Mother really doesn't know. I swore to young miss that I would never mention her name to you in this life. She hoped that you could be a normal person peacefully. However, how could her bloodline be normal when she was born? She didn't want you to go down a dead end and focus on revenge. Wei Ziqin hugged the girl and reached out to brush a strand of hair on her cheek behind her head. Mother only knew. When young miss gave birth to you, she told me that she didn't have long to live. But mother really didn't know that she would actually set up an inheritance mystic realm and let herself die alone in the mystic realm. Wei Ziqin's voice choked with sobs. Chapter 1356. Mom, didn't I tell you? Her inheritance mystic realm is set up on the mountain behind our Quoto village. Wei Ziqin was startled. She pursed her lips and shook her head. She probably thought that even if she died, she would still want to be a little closer to you. Child, you are a concern that she can't abandon. Wei Ziqin held her daughter's hand and tightly held that half-jade pendant in her palm. Believe Mom. As long as there is a sliver of hope, your biological mother wouldn't hand you over to me, Wei Ziqin said softly as she stroked her daughter's head. So, don't hate her, okay? I don't hate her, Arbor said indifferently. Wei Ziqin's eyes filled with tears. But you are so cold. Mom's heart aches when I see you. Mom, don't think too much. My mind is just a little confused for a moment. Arbor held her hand and said indifferently, Mom, you swore to her that you wouldn't tell me the truth. But today, you personally broke this oath. Her mother valued promises so much. In her previous life, when her family was so poor, her mother had never thought of sending her, a burden, away. And her father, this honest and stupidly filial man, never thought of sending her away either. Are they stupid? Aren't these two stupid? Why didn't they send her away? They should have just sent her away and left her to fend for herself. In her previous life, she was the one who dragged their family down. It was her. It was her, this jinx. What does it matter? My daughter's safety is the most important. Wei Ziqin smiled with tears in her eyes. After hearing all this, do you have any clues? Child. Seeing her in a daze, Wei Ziqin reached out to shake her body. Then, she cried, Child, you mustn't go down a dead end. You have to be clear about one thing. No matter what your surname is, you are Dad and Mom's child. Dad and Mom don't have much ability, but we will definitely do our best to protect you for life. Mother, I know. Arbor came back to his senses and wiped his mother's face with a handkerchief. You've always been a good mother. In my heart, you and Dad are my parents. There's no difference. Wei Ziqin burst into tears. She was both moved and emotional. Child, do you have any clues? Arbor shook his head and nodded. I suspect that the people who are targeting me are her enemies. But right now, I don't know who they are. Mother, don't worry. Your daughter isn't that weak now. She would protect the entire family, for sure. Wei Ziqin nodded. Alright, Mother believes in you. Mother, I want to stay here for a while longer. Arbor's expression was getting colder and colder. Wei Ziqin nodded. Then don't stay too long. This place is cold. Xiao Mu hummed in assent as she watched her mother walk out of the ancestral hall's main entrance. Her mother's shadow on the ground disappeared from her sight. She didn't know how long she had been sitting alone in the ancestral hall. It seemed to have been so long that her breathing was fading. Only then did she slowly raise her head. She reached out to take the memorial tablet and hugged it in her arms. It was a very cold feeling. It was as if the coldness had penetrated the deepest part of her heart. She shuddered violently. Hugging Long Chuyun's memorial tablet, she muttered to herself, "Long time no see." 26 years and 15 years later, she finally found out that her biological mother was Long Chuyun. Her tears fell silently. Chapter 1357. No matter how Long Chuyun wished for her to live a peaceful life, in reality, it was impossible for her to live a peaceful life. The group of people targeting Long Chuyun would not stop attacking her. She could only fight back in order to continue living. "So, I'll have to disappoint you." She would eventually return to the divine continent and seek justice for her past and present lives. Arbor composed herself and walked out of the ancestral hall, returning to her room. But when she pushed open the door, she was a bit stunned. She went to the wrong room. Sorry, I went to the wrong room." The little fellow stammered and left the room. Then, she looked around with a dumbfounded expression, then looked at the room's door. That's right. This was her boudoir. But who was that man lying on the brocade couch in front of the window that she often used to read? "Who are you?" Arbor kicked the door open. The little fat squirrel sitting on the side couldn't help but cover its furry face. Just now, it had also courted disaster by asking this devilish man, but in the end, it was kicked out of the window by him. "This tea is bland and tasteless. It doesn't taste good. Bring me the wine." The man who was lying on her brocade couch did not have a proper appearance. He crossed his legs and cast a sidelong glance at her. "Scram!" Our dear Xiao Mu angrily roared. Where did this devilish man come from? He actually dared to barge into this darling's boudoir, and even openly lay on her soft brocade. This was simply outrageous. In the next moment, a certain person discovered that she had been flung out of the room with a flick of his sleeve. She staggered back a few steps. The little fat squirrel didn't know whether to laugh or cry on its furry face. It hurriedly jumped up and hugged one of the devilish man's arms, making a fuss. "Great celestial supremacy, don't be angry, don't be angry. Master's memory isn't too good. Your memory is actually so bad at such a young age." The man muttered and glanced at the little girl who had angrily jumped in from outside the door. "Who the hell are you?" This guy was too powerful. She didn't see him move, but she was flung out of the room by him. The most ridiculous thing was that, combined with her scram just now, the result was the one who scrammed out of the room was actually herself, really. This darling was so angry. "Master, master, master." The little fat squirrel hurriedly jumped onto her shoulder and nuzzled her neck, whispering, "Him. Lord Immortal. I don't know him." Arbor was baffled. A certain venerable immortal glanced at her with watery eyes. Suddenly, Chunhua smiled brilliantly. "Do you want this venerable to help you remember?" Arbor shivered inexplicably and quickly shook his head. "No need." "Then, do you remember who I am now?" Arbor tilted his head and thought for 3 seconds. A certain venerable immortal suddenly flew over from the brocade couch and instantly arrived in front of her. His handsome face darkened as he roared, "Do you need to consider for so long? You're the guy who used a finger to make that old geezer from the Mu family in the courtyard self-destruct on the spot." Arbor's brain circuit suddenly came back, and she hurriedly shouted out. The fat squirrel clapped his little furry paws in surprise. "Master, you're awesome. I've been with you for so long, but this is the first time I've heard you say such a long sentence." There was no pause in between, and he didn't even pant. "Arbor, remove the word, guy." The venerable immortal looked at her with a smile and said, "Little girl, you have the aura of the mystic domain on you, so you're definitely not an ordinary person." Chapter 1358. Arbor's entire body jolted, and she immediately looked at him warily. Even Mo Lien hadn't been able to tell that she had a mystic domain in her body. Who was this person, to actually be able to see through the paradise planet on her body? Why are you glaring at this sovereign like that? So rude. He muttered, and suddenly reached out to grab her small hand. Hurry up and take it out. You must have wine on you. Why you? Where did you come from? You actually don't know where I came from. The sovereign immortal glared at her angrily, and a slender finger nearly tapped the tip of her small nose. He said angrily, why you? You little muddle-headed bug. Our dear Chiao Mu was instantly very angry. Growing up, people had always praised her for being smart, wise, and fair. Who would point at her small nose and call her a muddle-headed bug? This was simply preposterous. Cough. The little Traiant really couldn't stand it anymore. He ran out of Paradise Planet and kicked Chiochio, who was occupying her shoulder, down. He said softly, Master, let me tell you. This is the sovereign immortal that you used the deity inviting talisman to invite over. What? Arbor was stunned. Didn't you say that those sovereigns were all busy? The little Traiant hurriedly covered his eyes with 2 tree branches. How could he have known that the deity inviting talisman that Master used would only appear after such a long time? Arbor was even more speechless. She thought that her deity inviting talisman had been wasted. How could she connect this person in front of her with her deity inviting talisman for no reason? Arbor sized up this young man, and the other party's charming and enchanting eyes were also staring at her with a smile that wasn't a smile. His thin lips were moist and pink, and a lock of curly hair fell on his cheeks. His slender body leaned lazily against the door, leaning against it without any sense of propriety. She recalled that this person had landed in the courtyard with fragrant peach blossoms all over his body, and his red clothes were very eye-catching. And at this moment, he had actually changed into a set of pink clothes. No, he had also changed his hairstyle. Just now, his hair was not tied up, but now, he had changed it into long, curly hair. Could it be that every time he changed his clothes, he had to match it with a unique hairstyle? Oh my God, he's even more diligent in changing clothes than this girl. A thought flashed through Arbor's mind. Were you really invited by my God-inviting talisman? Are you the Peach Blossom Immortal Venerable? At least you know your stuff. The man nodded and looked at her as if she was a promising child. Child, what's your name? Arbor. The Venerable Peach Blossom Immortal glanced at her and suddenly laughed. Aren't you from a talisman aristocratic family? You're trying to trick me, right? I clearly heard them saying that your surname is Mu. Arbor's little face immediately turned gloomy. He immediately turned around and left. The Venerable Peach Blossom Immortal was stunned and subconsciously blocked her. TSK, such a temper at such a young age. Okay. I'll call you Arbor, okay? How about I tell you my name, and you give me good wine? Aren't you called Peach Blossom? You're called Peach Blossom. The Venerable Peach Blossom Immortal looked at her speechlessly. Why did he feel that if he continued to argue with this child, he would be angered to death? As the two of them talked by the window, Lightning, who was squatting on the tree, hurriedly took out a communication jade talisman from his pocket and scribbled a few lines of words. Without another word, he reported to the Crown Prince. Your Highness, bad news. There's another man in the Crown Princess's room. You've been cheated on again. Chapter 1359. Those 2 members of the Fan clan who attacked the Crown Princess probably left our Seekong planet through a special array. Huifeng was currently reporting the Fan clan situation in the study. According to the Crown Princess's explanation, that kind of spatial talisman array consumes talisman energy each time it's used. The further the distance, the greater the talisman energy consumption. If talisman energy can't be replenished in time, it can't be used multiple times. Huifeng coughed lightly and said, in this subordinate's opinion, those two members of the Fan clan probably planned their escape beforehand. They simply didn't think of turning back. Mo Yen closed the booklet in her hand and sneered, they got off easy. Your Highness, how should we deal with the members of the Fan clan? The Fan clan produced two degenerates who rebelled and plotted against the Crown Princess. Its family head Fan's fault for not properly disciplining them. As the head of the clan, he naturally has to bear the main responsibility. Go, behead family head Fan in public. As for the rest of the Fan clan, banish them all from the capital and never let them return. Mo Lien narrowed her eyes as she coldly ordered. He wanted to let all the forces in the entire Mo kingdom capital know not to provoke his little crown princess again. Huifeng's mouth twitched, and he nodded and cupped his hands. Yes, this subordinate will handle it right away. Mo Lien nodded, her expression faintly weary. These trivial matters were messy and very annoying to deal with. Suddenly, she felt the jade messenger talisman in her pocket heat up slightly, so Mo Lien took it out. Upon seeing it, she immediately jumped up from her stool. Huifeng had just left the room and didn't have time to instruct who to do what when he turned around, only to see His Highness the Crown Prince rushing outside in a flurry. In the blink of an eye, he was gone. Huifeng, what was going on? Just now, the Crown Prince was still sitting calmly at his desk, dealing with matters. Why did he run off in such a hurry before 3 minutes had even passed? On the other side, Arbor took out a jar of bamboo leaf brew from Paradise Planet and placed it in front of the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal. He looked at him curiously and asked, how long can you exist? Little girl, you speak as if I'm a summoned creature. How long do you think I'll exist? Isn't this the talisman you drew? The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal flicked her forehead in annoyance and took the bamboo leaf brew from her. Opening the seal, a rich wine aroma wafted out. Not bad, not bad, not bad at all. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal poured himself a cup of wine and narrowed his eyes. Oh my God! It had been a long time since he had drunk such good wine. Sure enough, living in the mortal world was great. He could eat and drink as he pleased. How long had it been since he had tasted such a feeling? Unlike that damned place where they came and went, there was only a vast expanse of white mist. Everyone was drinking the wind and admiring the moon, cultivating without eating. They were like idiots every day. Arbor smelled the aroma of the wine and looked a little puzzled. She remembered that when second uncle gave this batch of bamboo leaf brew to her back then, they had taken 3 to 4 jars to drink. At that time, there hadn't been such a rich wine aroma. Could it be that the rich mystic energy in the mystic domain had imperceptibly transformed it? Good wine. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal poured himself another cup. Arbor couldn't help but feel curious when she saw him drinking so happily. Was it really that good? She took a cup and was about to reach for the wine jar when that fellow snatched it away. Shoo shoo shoo. What's a child drinking wine for? He flung his sleeves at her in disdain. You're the child. Chapter 1360. Arbor tugged at his sleeve and reached out to snatch the wine in his hand. Amused, the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal raised his hand and tried to pinch her expressionless face. Children should act like children. Why are you pulling a long face all day? I'm an adult. With a taut face, Arbor turned around and dodged his fingers. She said angrily, your family is full of children. TSK. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal raised his head and gulped down the wine in one gulp, emptying the contents of the jug. Arbor glared at him coldly. Give me 2 more pots. No more. Who are you trying to fool? The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal flashed to her side and spread out his slender, jade-white fingers, shaking them in front of her. We agreed earlier that I'll tell you my name and you'll give me wine. Who agreed with you? Arbor twisted around and aimed the back of her head at him. Listen carefully, this venerable one's name is Rotten Peach Blossom. You're the Rotten Peach Blossom. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal raised his hand, and peach blossom petals sprouted from his slender wrists as if there was no end to them. This is merely a form that I created by activating the wood spirit. A certain venerable immortal glanced at her irritably. You don't know. Just like your water spirit that can melt ice and snow, this wood spirit's form is even more colorful and ever-changing. All the plants in the world can take on the form of wood. How can I not know? Arbor stubbornly maintained her stoic face and indifferently swept her gaze over his face. With a flip of her hand, the wood spirit turned into a small yellow flower and landed on her palm. Isn't it just like this? The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal, why was this child so unadorable? What attack power can a small flower like you have? Your peach blossom has attack power. Nah. My cultivation has already reached the stage where even a few small peach blossom petals can hurt people. You're different. With your current cultivation as a level 14 little mystic cultivator. Just now, you had to do that in order to injure the great spirit master. As he spoke, the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's hand quickly condensed a wave of wood spiritual energy. In an instant, it transformed into a man-eating flower with its mouth wide open. The flower's stamen spat out a thick wave of spiritual energy, which shot towards the wall of the room like a sharp sword. Hey, 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 don't destroy my room. The spiritual energy was about to hit the wall, but in the blink of an eye, it turned into nothingness and slowly dissipated. Arbor's eyes widened in surprise. He turned to look at him. You're pretty good. Give it a try. Xiao Mu nodded and took a deep breath. She then channeled her with spiritual energy and created a man-eating flower according to what she had previously drawn. However, his man-eating flower's head was only 1/5 the size of the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's head. Furthermore, it couldn't spit out spiritual energy. It looked rather unsightly. Take it slow. You're smart. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal couldn't help but pat the child's head and nodded. Bam! In the blink of an eye, a streak of fire shot towards the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's hand. If he hadn't dodged quickly, he would have been burned. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal leaned to the side and fell on the brocade couch by the window. He looked up at the man who had jumped through the door. Who are you? Mo Yen was instantly enraged when she saw this evildoer's posture. How can I get away with 2 more chapters? _carrot recently, updating 10 chapters every day simply doesn't seem like something I can do. Chapter 1361. Arbor was still immersed in the power of the wood spirits that the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal had used. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's control of the wood spirits was truly perfect, and he could control them as he wished. It was very pleasing to the eye. The wood spirits had obediently submitted to him, and they could change as he wished. He wondered when she would be able to do that. Arbor lowered his head and took out 2 bottles of bamboo leaf wine. Since you taught me the spirit technique, Lien. When did Mo Lien arrive? How did the 2 of them start fighting? The 2 of them had flown out of the house and were fighting on the roof hundreds of times. Arbor hurriedly ran out of the house and stood in the courtyard, waving at them. Stop fighting. Men like to fight. See, in the blink of an eye, they were fighting on the roof. The little girl sighed and shook her head. She swept a disdainful glance at them. Whoosh! Whoosh! 2 slender figures, one in front and one behind, suddenly appeared in front of her like shooting stars. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal directly reached out and snatched the 2 bottles of wine from her hands. He dodged to the side, avoiding Mo Lien's line of fire. He glanced back at him and could not help but click his tongue. Kid, with your cultivation, how can you still survive in the secular world? Lien. Arbor hurriedly went forward and tugged at his sleeve. Why did you come here? Who is he? Prince Mo exuded a cold aura. The cold light in his eyes was like a solid sword. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal hugged the 2 bottles of wine and drank with a smile. Kid? Who is he? He's a venerable immortal that I invited with a talisman. Venerable immortal? Mo Lien's eyes flashed. Are you sure? Arbor nodded her little head very honestly. Hey, kid, you didn't expect this, did you? I was being lenient just now. Otherwise, do you think you can exchange 100 blows with me? Are you kidding me? The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal gulped down half the bottle of wine and exhaled. Good wine. Why did you invite him here? What? Inviting a deity is of course to fight. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal crossed his long and slender leg before turning to shake his head at Mo Lien. Don't sway, don't sway. You brat, do you think I'll be afraid of you just because you have 3 heads? Arbor. Mo Lien sneered, get the hell out of here after the fight. Are you trying to cheat me out of my food? It's none of your business. I'm eating the little girl's food, not yours. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal couldn't even straighten his tongue and spoke in a muffled voice, haven't you heard of an old saying? It's easy to invite a god in, but difficult to send him away. Mo Lien's eyes flashed with anger. He was about to step forward and beat the shameless guy again when Arbor quickly held him down. He raised his hand and patted his chest to calm him down. Don't be angry, don't be angry. I'm telling you, he won't stay for long. How? How did you know? The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal replied to the little girl's question. How can he stay here? It'd be strange if the heavenly Tao didn't kill him. Arbor winked at Mo Lien. When I drew the deity inviting talisman, there was a small description. Summon a deity to the world, and it can assist in battle for 2 hours. In other words, this venerable Peach Blossom Immortal could stay here for 2 hours at most before he had to disappear. Nonsense. A certain venerable Peach Blossom Immortal who had passed out by the flower rack waved his hand and said. How much did he drink? About 1.5 bottles. TSK, with this alcohol tolerance? He's only slightly better than second uncle. And a venerable immortal. He must be a fake. Chapter 1362. Jojo, when did you invite him over? How long has it been? The main thing was, had the 2 hours passed? If not, then he would have to take action. He was a very vigilant person with a sense of danger. He would never leave such a peerless demon by his wife's side. Although the little guy looked like he had not been enlightened, there was no guarantee that someone would take advantage of the situation. When Arbor heard this question, she was slightly taken aback. Then, she tilted her head and looked like she was thinking hard. Okay, it seems like it's been a long time. I've been in the ancestral hall for the whole afternoon. Oh, right. She had not thought that this venerable immortal had been here for more than 2 hours. Prince Mo's expression changed. He thought of the strange summoned beasts by Jojo's side. It can't be that he can't return after being summoned, right? It can't be. Arbor looked at a certain venerable immortal who was sprawled out on all fours next to the flower stand and twitched her mouth speechlessly. Jojo. Aya, mother is here. Mother is going to nag when she sees you. Arbor pushed the crown prince and said with a stoic expression, hurry up and leave. Mother said that we can't see each other for the next few days. Okay. Then we'll see each other in 3 days. Mo Lien quickly stole a kiss on her cheek. Then, she nimbly turned and dodged the little guy's pinching fingers. She ran to the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's side and picked up the unconscious guy. Then, she turned and jumped onto the wall. Hey, where are you going to throw him? After all, This was a great immortal whom she had invited using the god-inviting talisman. Don't worry. Mo Lien waved her hand. Without waiting for him to finish speaking, she ducked her head and disappeared from the wall. Wei Ziqin led a group of people over and looked around suspiciously. Jojo, who are you talking to? No one. Arbor turned to look at her mother. Wei Ziqin was only puzzled for a few seconds, and then her face was full of joy again. Child, come and try it on. I've changed your wedding dress. I told you my daughter has lost a lot of weight. Look at her waist, it's so thin that you can't even see it. Mother, it's not that exaggerated. One day later, Mo Lien sent Xiaomu a message. That fellow that you said would disappear in 2 hours is still in the palace right now, happily feasting on fish and meat. Arbor. The days flew by amidst the bustling preparations. On the day of the wedding ceremony, the palace had sent a lot of things, such as jewelry, clothing, daily necessities such as gold, silver, jade, and so on. There were more than 100 types of hairpins inlaid with various gems and pearls. The fur used to make all kinds of bedding and jackets was divided into mink fur, otter fur, and fox fur. There were more than 100 sheets of each, and countless pieces of silk and satin. Naturally, they wouldn't lack the various kinds of rice and food that they needed now. Arbor couldn't be bothered to look through these things. When her mother had people send them to her courtyard, she just let them spread out on the ground. The day before the wedding, the Qiao family sent the crown princess's dowry to the eastern palace. That was truly 1,000 mu of fertile land, 10 li of red dowry that dazzled one's eyes. When the dowry was carried out, it indeed formed a long winding dragon. The items placed in the open space in front of Qiao Mu's courtyard nearly filled up the entire courtyard. In addition to the gifts from the great king and queen, there were also all the things that Prince Mo had privately turned over. There were deeds to houses, land, and shops. It was a dazzling sight. She knew that her husband was a rich man, but when this pile of things was placed in front of her, she really felt dizzy. It's over. Chapter 1363. On the day of the wedding, the crown prince went to the longevity palace in his royal robes and kowtowed to the queen dowager and the great king. Queen Zhao's eyes were filled with warmth as she gazed at her outstanding son. The imperial chariot left the palace, escorted by guards. The road from Minshun Avenue to the palace was basically controlled by the Dragon Saliva Guard to prevent any accidents. The procession meandered slowly. Mo Lien's anxious heart was gnawing at him. Under the jade crown was a handsome face. His eyebrows reached his temples, and his phoenix-like eyes looked around. His spirit had long flown somewhere. Your Highness, calm down. You'll be able to see the crown princess very soon. How could he calm down? He could even hear his own heartbeat now. He would wait for as long as he wished for as long as he wished for as long as he wished for. The day of the wedding had finally arrived. On the other side, the Qiao family had been busy since early in the morning. Even though many people had been temporarily transferred from the palace to help, Wei Ziqin still felt that there was not enough manpower. Master, let me tell you, it's really lively outside today. Qing Huan flapped her wings and flew in through the window. When she saw the girl in a bright red wedding gown sitting in front of the dressing mirror, she only felt a fire burning in her eyes. This wedding gown was made of cloud sky brocade. Everyone knew that cloud sky brocade was worth 10,000 taels of gold in the past, but in today's world, it was almost out of stock. The little girl sitting in front of the dressing mirror had her hair tied up in a bun. She was wearing a bright red wedding gown, which complemented her delicate little face. She lifted her wrist slightly, and her skin was as smooth as cream. There was only a white jade bracelet engraved with a green pine tree on her wrist. When she stood up, her cloud sky brocade spread out in layers. On her feet was a pair of lotus flower embroidered boots. When she walked, it was as if a red cloud had spread out, and a fragrance filled the air. She was really a beautiful little girl. It was rare for the little fellow to wear a red robe. When she wore it occasionally, it really made people unable to take their eyes off her. Those female attendants who had never been close to her before had been transferred over to serve her at the last moment. Looking at the expressionless expression on her smooth and exquisite little face, they couldn't help but secretly guess if the Crown Prince Consort was dissatisfied with this marriage. However, that cold little face, coupled with this fiery wedding dress, was really indescribably unique and beautiful. As soon as the auspicious hour arrived, the little crown princess was escorted to the central hall by a crowd of people. She was welcomed into the main hall in a lively manner. Xiao Zhongbang and his wife looked at their daughter with gratification. Second uncle, second aunt, Xiaohu, and the rest had all changed into new clothes and were sitting in the main hall, waiting for her to come. Xiao Lin held her younger brother's hand and wiped away her tears with the little monk. However, looking at the bulging bags, they should have already received a lot of gifts. A crowd of people crowded around her as they noisily walked in the direction of the imperial carriage. When she looked up, she could see the crown prince, dressed in a royal robe, impatiently walking in from the main entrance in a magnificent manner. The moment the two groups of people met, Prince Mo had just taken his little wife's hand with a smile. However, he saw that the little girl's body was suddenly enveloped by a red and greasy light. That smear of red was so dazzling that it almost stole the brilliance of the wedding gown. In an instant, it exploded from her body. Screech! After a phoenix cry. A dazzling light suddenly flew up from her body and instantly dyed the entire Minshan Avenue with a bright red luster. Chapter 1364. Everyone was stunned for a moment as they looked up at the sky. It was an egg. An egg flew out of the crown princess's body and rolled in the air, emitting rays of red light. Mo Yen subconsciously grabbed Arbor's wrist and held it tightly in her hand. Her gaze followed the crowd and looked up at the sky. The egg rolled in the air for a while before it suddenly made cracking sounds and cracks appeared on the eggshell. Red light shot up into the sky and overflowed, almost blinding everyone's eyes. Arbor blinked and blinked again. He suddenly pointed at the egg in the air and said, "It's coming out." Screech! After another phoenix cry, the damage to the eggshell became greater and greater. After a few more cracking sounds. Bang! The eggshell completely shattered and every piece of eggshell was suspended in the air. Immediately after, a fiery red light jumped out of the egg and was wrapped in layers of red mist. At first it was unclear what it was, but after all the eggshell fragments were sucked in by the red mist. In just a few moments, a pair of dazzling crimson wings suddenly stretched out from the fog. It spread out and covered the sky, blocking the dazzling red sun and the pure white clouds. My God! What is that? It looks like a fong, an ancient phoenix. The phoenix's long and elegant wings scattered a stream of scarlet flames as it circled in the air and cried out happily. Only Miss Xiao knew that this little guy was currently shouting in her conscience. I'm coming out, I'm coming out. I'm finally coming out, Owo. Look at how happy he is. He must have been very stifled in the egg, Arbor thought as he looked up at the fire phoenix whose body was even larger than Qing Wan's. Big Cyan, it should be your brother, right? Xiao Mu glanced at the little chick flying around her head. TCH, it's not from the same clan as him. Look at that silly little guy, how could it be my brother? Qing Wan glanced at the sky in disdain and flapped its wings. Master, give it a name. He was definitely trying to trick Fire Phoenix, because he was very clear that the names his master came up with were generally not good. Egg, I'll call you Fire from now on. How about it? No, how can I have such a girly name? Then why don't you just call me an egg? Egg's my ass. I'm no longer an egg. The fire phoenix was so angry that it let out a cry as it spun back and forth in the air. You're so picky. Why don't we call you she, her? Seeing that you're wearing a fiery red robe, calling you wouldn't be a bad idea, the little fellow thought. Pfft. Qing Yuan laughed so hard that she somersaulted in the air. What the hell? Which little girl's name is this? Egg, fireball, pick one. Arbor made the final decision, as if there was nothing he could do about it. The phoenix egg was helpless and could only say, Huahua, then. Alright, being called Huahua is at least 1,000 times better than being called The ancient fire phoenix circled in the air. After a shrill cry, birds from all directions flew towards the Marquis of Jiayuan's estate on Minshan Avenue. Clusters upon clusters of colorful flowers formed an extremely beautiful painting of 100 birds paying homage to the phoenix. The street, which was originally gray due to the withered vegetation, was instantly filled with gorgeous colors. The children were the happiest as they clapped their hands and jumped around while shouting, "Crown Princess! Crown Princess!" Chapter 1365. Go! Go, 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 go! Several men hiding in the shadows of the crowd, who were looking around, couldn't help but reach out to swat away the birds that didn't have eyes flying over. An elderly man beside them couldn't resist saying, "Hey, don't rush, don't rush. When His Highness the Crown Prince and Her Highness the Crown Princess leave Minshan Boulevard later, we might be able to catch a few birds back to roast and eat." Normally, these birds hid very well, so how could they catch them? When those men who had been looking around heard this, they coldly swept a few glances at the commoners who chimed in, and the fierce-looking muscles on their faces trembled slightly. Just as they were about to squeeze out of the crowd, several black-clothed youths swiftly appeared around them. They clamped their arms behind their backs and silently dragged them out of the crowd, completely not alerting the bustling commoners in the surroundings. The Night Pavilion's mission today was to secretly investigate all suspicious characters and cooperate with Dragon Saliva Guard Captain Wuxia in the open to maintain law and order here. They couldn't allow any suspicious characters to ruin the wedding that His Highness the Crown Prince had been looking forward to with great difficulty. Therefore, the group of people that the Night Pavilion sent out were basically level 12 mystic cultivators and above, and their fiery eyes were very sharp. From Minshan Boulevard to the Eastern Palace, Missouri Lien had arranged for people to be stationed on every path that could possibly have a crisis, so they could deal with any unexpected situation at any time. This wedding was bound to be carried out perfectly. No one was allowed to carry out any destructive actions. Emicham, Huahua. Come down. I'm going out. Arbor reached out a small hand and lightly beckoned at the sky. Shriek. After Huahua let out a cheerful phoenix cry, it charged straight down like a red halo and rapidly swooped down. Whoosh! The eunuchs, royal maids, royal guards, and the others blocking the entrance all cried out in alarm. Just as this ball of flame was about to land in the crowd. That fire was like a shattered star, fading away bit by bit. The phoenix returned to its position and suddenly went to Paradise Planet inside Arbor's body. Everyone only saw that ball of raging fire pounce on the Crown Princess, causing the tassels on her phoenix coronet to sway and the pearls and jades to jingle. This kind of little Crown Princess was truly too dazzling. Like light clouds covering the moon, like flowing wind returning snow. Looking from afar, it was as clear as a bright pearl, as fine as the bright moon in the sky. Looking around, the light in his eyes flowed, and he suddenly revealed a brilliant smile towards the Crown Prince. As Mo Lien held her small hand, he fixated his gaze on his wifey. How could he bear to shift his gaze away? This smile stunned the palace maids and eunuchs who were escorting them out. As far as he could remember, the Crown Princess had never smiled before. However, once she smiled, even 1,000 flowers could only bow down to her. Wei Ziqin secretly wiped away her tears, a trace of a smile hanging at the corner of her mouth. Yet, from both sides of Minshan Avenue came a burst of excited cheers. Oh my God, the phoenix fell into the Crown Princess's house. As expected of our Mo Kingdom's crown princess. She truly is the destined heavenly phoenix, the wife of my northernmost heir apparent. From both sides of the street came the cheers of the populace, the sea of people bowing down to the crown princess. All of them secretly looked up to see the crown princess being led out of the Marquis of Jiayuan's estate by His Highness the Crown Prince. This was incredible. The little crown princess's snow-white complexion was as beautiful as a fairy that had descended to the mortal world, making people unable to move their eyes away. It was only when the crown prince helped the crown princess onto the imperial carriage that the two people set off, slowly leaving with the royal guards surrounding them. Chapter 1366. After boarding the royal carriage, Crown Prince Mo also tightly grasped her petite hand the entire time, his phoenix eyes fixated on his wifey. Arbor turned to glance at him. "Why do you keep staring at me? You look especially good today." Mo Yen murmured softly. He raised her small hand to his lips and kissed it. "What should I do? I don't want others to see you like this. You look good today too." Arbor's eyes suddenly lit up, and she nodded before adding, especially good looking. Mo Yen almost laughed out loud. He held her small hand and said, "Jojo, when you smiled at me just now, do you know what I was thinking?" Arbor shook her small head. "I was thinking that it would be great if I could capture that moment in a painting. This kind of smile is what I like the most, and I want to always have it. It's the most precious thing in my life." He moved his fingers and gently pinched her small hand. Arbor pursed her small lips, and her fingers lightly crawled in his palm. "No need." "There's no need to go through the trouble of capturing it in a painting." The little fellow blinked and looked at him as she said, "If you want to see it, I'll give you a smile." Happiness came so suddenly that Prince Mo was about to burst with joy. He reached out, wanting to pull her into his arms, but then he remembered that they were in the imperial carriage and there were people everywhere, so he could only restrain himself. His eyes curved into crescents, and he was filled with a gentle smile. "Jojo, you're so good to me." "That's true." Arbor nodded. The moment the imperial carriage exited Minshun Boulevard, it was blocked by a gift-bearing procession at the intersection. 8 white horses with hooves treading on snow led the way, followed by a string of people holding trays. They stood quietly in front of the crowd. Xiao 11Z, who was accompanying them, quickly ran over and whispered a few words into the crown prince's ear, who was leaning down slightly. The crown prince's handsome face immediately turned ugly. The 4th young master of the Duan clan congratulates the crown princess on her wedding. We present 8 pairs of jade heavenly thunder, 18 soul-seizing ice soul beads, 1 illusory sea golden robe, 1 fire fox armor, 3 phoenix cloud blades, 5 grand emperor spirit pills, 100 dotted star leaves. All kinds of rare treasures, hidden weapons, divine weapons, spirit pills, and miraculous medicines were listed for about the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. Arbor looked back at Mo Yen, and the couple looked at each other. The commoners on the street were dumbfounded and speechless for a long time. This list of gifts was too frightening. There were things like jade heavenly 9 lightning and illusory sea golden thread robe. Commoners like them had never heard of such things since they were born. This Duan 4th young master was really generous. A steward of the Duan family respectfully handed the gift list to the crown princess. The little crown princess glanced at it and calmly said, "Not bad." Then, she confiscated the gift list. "Everyone, Prince Mo's lips turned up slightly, but his eyes flashed with the glint of a sword. If Duan Yu dared to walk in front of him right now, he would definitely beat him to death. Why did you have to freaking choose this time to give gifts? Why did you have to block the way? Would it kill you to send a gift list to the Eastern Palace? Harboring malicious intentions. However, Mo Yen soon discovered that Duan Yu wasn't the only one harboring malicious intentions. It was as if those people had made an agreement to block the way and give gifts one after another. When Arba received the gift lists from the Qin estate's eldest young master and second young master in succession, the eldest young master gave an evaluation of not bad. The second young master threw out not bad. Everyone, I need to get busy. Continue tonight. Chapter 1367. At the same time, Anya Pavilion was shrouded in a dense gloomy aura. A yellow-clothed young lady stood motionlessly next to Commandery Princess Yi-Pen like a clay puppet. Commandery Princess Yi-Pen was holding a teacup that was emitting faint steam as she stared intently at her reflection in the mirror. The sound of light footsteps came from the side of the door. Su-Er ran in breathlessly from outside the door. Seeing Commandery Princess Yi-Pen look over, Su-Er shook her head helplessly. It can't be helped, Commandery Princess. His Highness the Crown Prince is too vigilant. All the roads from Minshun Boulevard to the Royal Palace have been strictly controlled. The troublemakers that we hired have mostly been caught by the Crown Prince's ambushers, so they won't be able to accomplish anything. Commandery Princess Yi-Pen's eyes turned blood-red instantly. She swept all the items on the table to the ground, and Commandery Princess Yi-Pen raised a bronze mirror up high before throwing it down with a clang. The huge commotion caused Su-Er to widen her eyes in fright, and she retreated a few steps. Fortunately, the yellow-clothed young lady had already dismissed the people in the room. At this time, other than Su-Er and that yellow-clothed young lady, no one else knew that the Commandery Princess could be so terrifying once she lost her mind and got angry. Ah! Su-Er exclaimed, Commandery Princess, don't be angry, Commandery Princess. Tell me, which part of me is inferior to that little bitch? Why did he choose her and not me? Tell me, tell me. Commandery Princess Yi-Pen shouted angrily with clenched fists. I think that Commandery Princess is 1,000,000 times better than her in every way, Su-Er said against her will. But he chose her and not me. Commandery Princess Yi-Pen was so angry that she flipped over the table and stood up with a bang. She was about to rush out without thinking. I'm going to find the Queen Dowager. Commandery Princess. Commandery Princess. Before Commandery Princess Yi-Pen could dash out the door, a yellow-clothed figure abruptly shot in front of her and stopped her. She looked at her solemnly and asked, Commandery Princess, what identity do you plan to use to discuss this matter with the Queen Dowager? If it is the 9th Miss of the Marquis of Su-An's estate, then your identity is still not good enough for His Highness the Crown Prince, the yellow-clothed young lady said dryly, her tone very calm. She was not mocking her, only stating the truth, if it is the Queen Dowager as a Commandery Princess. That was even more laughable. How could the Empress Dowager not know what the princess was thinking? But did she say anything? She just wants to find you a good marriage partner and marry you off as soon as possible. This is her pity for you as an elder. If you stubbornly intend to cause trouble in front of her, you will only wipe away the last bit of pity she has for you. The yellow-clothed woman's words were like a bucket of cold water that splashed Commandery Princess Yi-Pen awake. Ming Qian. Commandery Princess Yi-Pen's lips trembled as she crouched down and hugged herself, shuddering as she hugged herself into a ball. Do you know, I like that person a lot, like. Ever since I was young, I've felt that he was like a ray of light, so dazzling that it was daunting. Sometimes, you don't need any reason to like someone. You know, I really want him to take a closer look at my eyes, to let him feel my deep love for him. However, such a small wish cannot be fulfilled. Because that person's gaze had never stopped on her for even a second. Never. That was why she felt so indignant. Despair. Chapter 1368. Sigh. The yellow-clothed girl, Ming Qian, helped her up. Why bother? If you were willing to listen to me, you wouldn't have to be so stubborn. The yellow-clothed girl was quite perceptive. She understood very well that the Queen Dowager indeed doted on her master a lot, but this was all on the premise that her grandson could not be harmed. The Commandery Princess and Su-er were truly too childish in wanting to mess up His Highness the Crown Prince's grand wedding behind her back. If someone were to investigate this matter, they would definitely trace it back to her. At that time, Her Majesty the Queen Dowager's last bit of patience would be completely worn away. Alright, Commandery Princess, you had better rest properly inside. Don't go anywhere for the next few days. You still need to find someone to smooth things over for hiring local ruffians to cause trouble. So as to avoid His Highness the Crown Prince finding time to investigate you. At that time, it really would be too late for regrets. Commandery Princess Yi-pen shuddered. You mean, if he knew that I was the one who did this, he would execute me without regard for the Queen Dowager's feelings? His Highness is a ruthless person. Before you did these things, you should have clearly known the consequences. The Fan family is your example. After saying this, the yellow-clothed girl, Ming Qian, stood up and walked outside. She was in a hurry to deal with the mess that the Commandery Princess and Su had left behind. The veins on her forehead were throbbing, and she felt very vexed. Commandery Princess Yi-pen collapsed onto the bed, and Su-er quickly went up to soothe her. Commandery Princess, don't panic. With Ming Qian here, there definitely won't be a problem. Su-er, I didn't control myself, did I? Commandery Princess Yi-pen finally calmed down and muttered to herself, there's still a chance, right? Su-er, I still have a chance, right? Right. Commandery Princess, where there's life, there's hope. Commandery Princess, you must stay calm. In the future, you must not clash head-on with that crafty Crown Princess. As long as we can win the Queen Dowager's favor, there will still be a chance at that time. Su-er nodded repeatedly. Commandery Princess Yi-pen gazed at that girl with teary eyes. Su-er wasn't like that girl Ming Qian. She always acted like an old woman, was good at scheming, and was good at grasping people's hearts. Su-er was a straightforward person. She always treated Ming Qian's words like an imperial edict and did her best to carry them out. Compared to Ming Qian, who was smart and hard to control, she actually liked Su-er more. His usual reprimands were mostly just a pretense to knock her down a peg or two. Commandery Princess Yi-pen sat up straight and wiped the corners of her eyes with a handkerchief. Suddenly, her lips curled up into a cold smile. There is still a chance. Su-er felt that when her imperial princess spat out these words, it was as if she was swearing to the heavens. She didn't know if she was trying to convince herself or the heavens. My Joe's section break. After Arbor was sent to the Eastern Palace, he didn't stay idle. He ate and drank as usual, and had people remove the heavy phoenix crown from his head. Xiao Yao had entered the palace with him, so she couldn't help but find it amusing when she saw that he couldn't sit still. Crown Princess, His Highness is greeting guests in the forecourt. It will probably be a while before he comes over. How about I go to the kitchen to get some pastries for you? Arbor, who was eating a red date on the bed, looked up at her when he heard this. No need. There are so many red dates and longans here. It's enough for me to eat. Chapter 1369. Xiao Yao pursed her lips. What could she say? This little crown princess is too strange. I really pity the crown prince. He still has a long way to go. Cough. Xiao Yao coughed lightly and leaned forward to whisper to the little crown princess, do you still remember Madame's instructions? Arbor's hand, which was eating the red dates, paused. He wanted to ask her something, but he suddenly thought of something, and his face turned red. The next night, her mother talked to her and even secretly gave her a secret manual. When she opened it, she was so embarrassed that she wished she could dig a hole and bury herself in it. She had already thrown the book under the box as a last resort. What a joke. Did she even need to read that book? Back then, she was someone who lived to the age of 26. Although her life in her previous life was very monotonous, she was not a fool. Even if he had never experienced human affairs, he would have at least seen a pig run if he had never eaten pork. The young crown prince consort's face was stoic as she looked at Xiaoyao in all seriousness. Don't worry, nothing will happen. Just let him come. Xiaoyao. Why did she have the urge to laugh? Crown princess, are you sure you don't look like you want to fight? Okay. Xiaoyao will go to the kitchen and get you a bowl of soup or something. Drink it first to fill your stomach. I'm not hungry either. The little crown princess had already stuffed herself full with dates and longans. Xiaoyao's mouth twitched. This is His Highness's order. Xiaoyao will go now. Oh. Arbor was bored to death and fell on the bed. She felt that the bed was covered with melon seeds, peanuts, candies, red dates, longan, and 4 happiness dumplings. It made her waist and legs hurt. He had no choice but to turn over and continue eating. I really don't know who came up with this idea. Isn't it uncomfortable to scatter these things on the bed? She flipped through the books again. When she heard footsteps coming from outside the door, she casually glanced over. Xiaoyao, you're back so soon. Arbor looked at her with some confusion. The small kitchen in the East Palace was quite a distance away from here. Could it be that Xiaoyao had returned before getting the food? Xiaoyao walked in with a smile. It was just a glance, but Arbor felt that there was something wrong with this Xiaoyao. Although she pretended very well, Xiaoyao had been by her side for many years. Her every move, frown, and smile had long been etched in her heart. It was impossible for her to be mistaken. Who are you? The incomer couldn't help but be startled by Qiao Mu's words. Had he been discovered again? This little guy is really amazing. Every time, it would only take a few breaths of time to see through his disguise. You're the snake beauty, or is it more appropriate to call you Ding Ting Ding? Arbor's eyes instantly turned cold. Without saying anything, she raised her hand and shot out a poisonous fog, which sprinkled over to wrap around his body. Cult Master Ding dodged with a sidestep. His entire body twisted like a fried dough twist as he suddenly disappeared from the door. Arbor stared ahead vigilantly. Sure enough, following the slight swaying of the air, a slender figure suddenly appeared in front of her. Cult Master Ding let out a long sigh. You want to kill me as soon as you see me? Why did she feel that this person was speaking to her in a familiar tone? It was really inexplicable. Whether it was the snake beauty in the underground village, or him targeting Mo Lien to steal her, or him poisoning Mo Lien with devil grass, it was clear that they were mortal enemies. Chapter 1370. Why are you looking at me like that? Cult Master Ding looked at her with an indecipherable expression. Suddenly, there was the sound of bones cracking, and the sweetly smiling Xiaoyao girl suddenly grew taller, turning into a slender man in purple. He narrowed his eyes and smiled faintly as he looked at her, his entire body emitting a seductive aura. Jojo, can I apologize to you? He had a pitiful expression as he looked at her and said, it was my fault for pretending to be your mother to deceive you, and it was even more my fault for leaving your mother in the room. Tell me, how can you forgive me? Arbor looked at him expressionlessly. The more she looked, the more she felt that there was something strange. This person acted like he was familiar with her, and it didn't seem like he was pretending. But she clearly wasn't familiar with him. Jojo? Arbor's small face was taut. You're here to court death, right? Why do you say that? You poisoned Mo Lien with devil grass before, and he was worried that he wouldn't be able to find you for revenge. Today, you delivered yourself to his doorstep, so aren't you just seeking your own death? Cult Master Ding snorted. He's lucky that he didn't die. Now, he actually wanted to marry her, which simply made him feel very surprised. Devil grass was a neurotoxin that even those poison experts might not be able to detoxify, so he didn't know how Prince Mo had managed to escape this calamity. Arbor suddenly struck out a palm at his chest. Cult Master Ding was stunned, but he didn't dodge or dodge, and met this palm head-on. Arbor was stunned by this guy's actions. Could it be that when he went out today, his head got hit by the door? Otherwise, why would he come and take her palm head-on? Jojo. Cult Master Ding coughed, then sighed and said, "Do you really want me to die so badly?" Arbor had a baffled expression. She also had no interest in making a move against someone who didn't have the heart to resist. Jojo. He subconsciously reached out to pull her small hand, but she dodged. Cult Master Ding immediately looked at his empty palm in a daze. A faint feeling of sadness spread through his heart as he raised his eyes to stare at her. The inexplicable feeling in Arbor's heart grew stronger. She remembered very clearly that she had nothing to do with this person other than two unpleasant encounters. Why did he have such a sad and accusing expression on his face? "What are you looking at?" The little fellow was a little angry. You look especially good today, Jojo." Cult Master Ding didn't know what he wanted to say. He felt that he was speaking incoherently. Arbor's little face was tense, and he had never let go of his nervousness. "Let me ask you. What did you do to Xiaoyao?" "I didn't do anything to her." Cult Master Ding shook his head. "I reckon she'll be back soon. Jojo, can you come with me?" He suddenly reached out to grab her small hand, but she dodged again and only hooked onto a piece of her brocade sleeve. "Hey, you're so strange. We're not familiar with each other. What do you mean by suddenly coming over to ask me to go with you? Because you don't belong in this kind of palace at all. The sky is high for birds to fly, and the sea is wide for fish to swim. Jojo, you have a broader future, don't you?" Arbor looked at him with a stoic face. "Even if I want to fly and jump, I won't fly with a stranger." What a lunatic. She didn't even know what he was doing here. This time, Cult Master Ding completely heard her words and understood the meaning behind them. What did you say?" Chapter 1371. His voice trembled slightly, and he looked up at her in almost disbelief. What did she just say? Was she faking it? She still didn't remember him. Did she forget the 2 days they spent together? They traveled together from the Mystic Beast Forest to the Mo Kingdom capital. She completely forgot about this period of time, right? No, that wasn't it. She was definitely faking it. She was faking it. This little fellow was best at faking it with a stoic face. "You're lying to me, right? You remember, right? Jojo. You definitely remember, right?" In his impatience, Cult Master Ding firmly grasped her small hand. "You remember. Jojo. You remember. You remember what my real name is. You also remember what I look like, right? Have you gone mad?" Arbor's small face flushed red. She pulled her precious small hand back from his and glared at him. "I don't know what the hell you're talking about." Cult Master Ding felt his chest constrict for no reason. His figure swayed slightly, and he was practically looking at her with a horrified expression. This gaze caused Xiao Mu to be baffled and perplexed. "Why do you keep looking at me like this? What do I remember about you? Why is it like this?" Cult Master Ding suddenly roared angrily and rushed forward to grab her arm, shaking her forcefully. "You're lying to me. You little liar. You're lying to me. Stop faking it, all right? This isn't fun at all. What the hell am I faking? What am I faking?" Arbor really didn't understand what was wrong with this person, barging into her bridal chamber and screaming like this. "Jojo, it's me. It's me. Wake up, all right? Did you take the wrong medicine again, that's why you don't remember me? You're the one who freaking took the wrong medicine. Arbor, wait a minute. What mystic beast forest? She suddenly had a bad premonition. Could it be? When her disaster-courting curse was in effect, not only did she encounter Sikong fooling in the mystic beast forest, but she also encountered Ding Ting Ding. This would explain why he looked so familiar with her, but she had no impression of him at all. This was because everything that happened while the disaster-courting talisman was in effect would be completely forgotten after she returned to normal. She would never tell anyone about this even if she was beaten to death. Right now, he could only endure all the suffering to the end to save face. I don't know what you're talking about. The little fellow slapped his hand away expressionlessly. He coughed lightly and said, "Let me give you a piece of advice. Leave quickly. You've already alerted the secret guards outside with your loud shouts. Mo Lien will be here in a few seconds. You can't defeat so many of them. Are you worried about me? Was there something wrong with this person? How could he tell that she was worried about him? She just didn't want to cause trouble on her wedding day. So long-winded. She spoke until her mouth was a little dry. You're worried about me, Jojo. Cult Master Ding jumped forward agitatedly. Jojo, leave with me, alright? How can this place suit you? This is deep in the palace, it's not a place you should stay. Jojo. Mo Lien's exclamation came from the window. Why aren't you leaving yet? Xiao Mu kicked Cult Master Ding irritably. My lotus is here. No, I'm not leaving. Unless you leave with me. Whoosh! A fiery red arrow shot in through the window like a gust of wind and nailed itself into Cult Master Ding's chest without any explanation. Chapter 1372. Cult Master Ding's expression was indifferent as he took out an eagle-eyed mask and covered his face. He turned his head and jumped out with an icy expression, meeting Mo Lien's sweeping fist head-on. Arbor was so angry that he jumped up from the bed. Who dares to destroy my room? What a joke. She still needed to sleep in this place later. If they beat it to a pulp, how could she still be in a good mood? The moment the two of them exchanged blows, they flew outside with a whoosh and jumped onto the glazed tiles of the Eastern Palace. The wood spirit and the fire spirit flew to the sides at the same time. Wherever they passed, a deep crack appeared on the bluestone tiles on the ground. Ding ting ding. The instant they exchanged blows, Mo Lien recognized this guy. This was because not just anyone could control the 8th layer of wood spirit. Try my wood thorns. Ding Ting Ding's lips curled into a smile. Suddenly, his expression darkened, and he set up layers of wood spirit with a flip of his hand. Thorns and thorns rolled under Mo Lien's feet. He jumped up, but the thorns and thorns quickly climbed up and circled around his feet. Several clusters of flames were cast down, but they were unable to obstruct the bramble's advance. Instead, it actually caused it to crawl even faster and more ferociously. As if it had been injected with hormones, it abruptly shot up several dozen meters and wrapped around Mo Lien's body in layers. Mo Lien narrowed her phoenix eyes, and a purple flame instantly transformed into a long dragon. It roared as it swooped down from the sky, attacking Cult Master Ding. At this moment, the two of them were practically fighting with their lives on the line. Arbor's eyelids kept twitching when he saw this. Disgraceful thing. How dare he come to cause trouble on her wedding day? Her good mood was instantly destroyed. How infuriating. Arbor raised a sword in his hand. With a stomp, he arrived beside Mo Lien with a whoosh. All of you, stop. The huge commotion in the Eastern Palace's bedchamber had already attracted the attention of people from all sides. At this moment, all the palaces and courtyards had secretly sent people over to inquire about the situation. Arbor coldly scolded, all of you, go guard the courtyard and keep your mouths shut. If anyone dares to come in and ask around, beat them up and throw them out. Yes. The eunuchs and palace maids didn't dare to say anything else. They all rushed to the eastern palace to guard it. Ding ting ding, are you going to stop? Arbor stared at him coldly and asked word by word. Cult Master Ding only felt that the little girl's eyes were especially cold when she looked at him. He felt like his heart was about to shatter. His body swayed slightly on the roof. Listen to me. You've come to stir things up again and again. What is the meaning of this? The little girl shouted. Mo Lien turned to look at Ding Ting Ding. She looked at him coldly and said, could it be that you want to see if I'm really fine after being poisoned by your devil grass, or if I'm just pretending? I'm here for Jojo, cult leader Ding said coldly. Mo Lien was instantly angered. You're here for Jojo? What are you here for? To take her away? Ha 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 ha. You're indulging in wild fantasies, ridiculous to the extreme. Who do you think you are? At least Jojo shouldn't be bound to this inner court deep in the palace, to be a palace girl. How do you know that I'll bind her? Mo Lien's cold eyes looked at him mercilessly. You still dare to speak nonsense? Nonsense? Cult Master Ding glared back, not to be outdone. I'm just speaking the truth. It's just that it's unpleasant to hear from you. It's over, broken sleep. Chapter 1373. She should have been free and unfettered. It's you. You cut off her wings for your own selfish reasons and even insisted on keeping her in a small box like a palace, Cult Master Ding berated loudly. Mo Lien and Arbor exchanged glances, looking at each other in dismay. Just how far did this person want to go with his words? Jojo, leave with me. Cult Master Ding extended his hand towards her and said to her in a strange tone, you can abandon all of this and fly in the sky, roam the forest, and roam this vast land. You should have soared 90,000 li in the sky and not be trapped in such a small place, content with the status quo as a crown princess. Arbor directly threw out a water blade, which glided through the air with a whoosh, heading straight for Cult Master Ding. Cult Master Ding didn't dodge and only looked at the little girl indifferently. At the same time, a slender figure pounced out from the side and suddenly blocked in front of her. The water blade Arbor threw out pierced through the other party's shoulder, leaving behind a rouge-like bloodstain. Young master, there are a lot of guards coming over here. Let's leave quickly. Bao Yan said anxiously. Cult Master Ding glanced at her coldly. Mo Lien raised his brows slightly and suddenly understood. You're that Ding Yun of Beijing Manor. Previously, he had seen Bao Yan, this girl, once. Other people might not remember a person they had only met once, but with Prince Mo's photographic memory, as long as he had seen someone, he wouldn't forget. So Ding Tingding's true identity was Beijing Manor's young master. Mo Lien felt a trace of surprise because the legends about Beijing Manor had never stopped. Darling Qiao had a confused look on her face. What Beijing Manor's young master? Wasn't this the thief sage Ding Tingding? Mo Lien suddenly turned his head to look at his wifey, only to see her looking up at him in bewilderment. His heart relaxed and he couldn't help but smile. It's fine. He stepped forward and gently held her wrist. Jojo, don't be afraid. Arbor couldn't help but roll his eyes at him. He really didn't know which eye of his saw that she was afraid. Let's go, young master, let's go. Bao Yan pounced over and grabbed Ding Yun's sleeve tightly, pulling him with all her might. Jojo, do you really not remember the 2 days we spent together? Arbor was expressionless. I have no idea what you're talking about. Cult Master Ding suddenly turned his gaze to Prince Mo. That day, Jojo promised me that he would be with me in the future. Impossible, Mo Lien interrupted him coldly without thinking, she won't promise you anything. Arbor's heart skipped a beat. He looked up at his Mo Lien. Heh, are you that confident? Humph, if I don't believe her, should I believe you? Mo Lien sneered and glanced at him. Ding Yun, Today is this crown prince's big day, so I don't want to kill you and ruin my happy occasion. I also don't want to make things difficult for a pitiful person like you. Leave immediately, and I'll spare your life. Let's go, young master, let's go. Bao Yan pulled Cult Master Ding with all her might. I'll come back to find you. I hope you've thought it through by then. Ding Yun smiled brightly and looked deeply at her. After saying these words, he quickly left the Eastern Palace with Bao Yan who was pulling him. Arbor gloomily looked up at Mo Yen. Chapter 1374. She couldn't help but mutter, who exactly is this person? He went through so much trouble and exerted so much effort just to come here and take her away. She wasn't a fool. Would she foolishly follow someone just because they told her to? It was rather baffling. Mo Yen was now very certain that something must have happened in the Mystic Beast Forest while the little fellow's 5 senses were in a daze, but she was mischievous and refused to say anything. Furthermore, he had basically guessed that she had probably already forgotten everything that happened while she was in a daze. However, if he wanted to know about this matter, he could still ask Qing Yuan. Qing Yuan definitely knew the truth. However, he felt that there was no need. Since the little one stubbornly refused to admit that she had lost her memories, then she definitely didn't want anyone to know about the process. Mo Yen felt that the little fellow most likely didn't simply eat the wrong medicine. She might have done something very strange. It had to be said that with Mo Yen's intelligence, he had already guessed most of it. At this time, the two dismissed the servants and returned to the bedchamber hand in hand. Mo Yen lifted his hand and hugged the troublesome little fellow. Jojo, I don't care what others say. I won't let you go. Where do you want to go? I'll go with you, all right? No matter if it's the Sea of Fire or the 9 heavens, I can go with you. Arbor shook her little head and poked him. Why would I go to that kind of place? I'll go if you go. He reached out and lifted her up. Arbor looked down at him and nodded. All right, if I go in the future, I'll bring you with me. Mo Yen nodded with a smile. He carried her to the table and sat her down, reaching out to take 2 wine cups. The two drank a cup of nuptial wine and then looked at each other. Prince Mo's gaze was somewhat infatuated. Arbor, however, was somewhat nervous. When she thought of the atlas that her mother had privately given her, her little face immediately flushed. What are you thinking about? Mo Yen asked softly. Nothing, nothing. Only after he spoke did he realize that he was stuttering. This was outrageous. How could she be a coward? Mo Yen glanced at her in amusement. She reached out to remove the hairpins and jewelry on her head. Are you tired after a long day? It's all right. There was nothing to tire her out. With her cultivation, this little tiredness was nothing. Mo Yen reached out and brushed her hair. Let's take a bath together. Bam! Miss Chiao gave him a knock on the head. What are you thinking about? Mo Yen. Looking at his innocent expression, Arbor instantly felt a little awkward. Oh no, she forgot that she was married to him. Cough. I'll go wash up. Don't follow me. Arbor jumped off his lap and ran into the inner room. Behind her, Prince Mo's chuckle could be heard. Arbor threw all thoughts of him to the back of her mind. She probably dawdled for almost an hour during the bath, thinking about all sorts of things and letting her imagination run wild. When she changed into a comfortable white robe and ran out with her long wet hair, she saw the crown prince sitting by the table. He had already changed out of his royal robe and had washed up. Under the red candlelight, that man was dressed casually. His eyebrows reached his temples. When he saw her come out, his phoenix eyes shifted to her face. It was as if he was made of jade. Chapter 1375. A jade-like beauty, so beautiful. Miss Chiao's eyes brightened as she bounced over to Prince Mo's side. He stretched out his arms and pulled her into his embrace. I thought you'd fallen asleep from bathing. Mo Yen teased as he reached out to gently stroke her hair. The fire's spiritual energy instantly dried her damp black hair. The little fellow moved her head and turned to look at him. She reached out to poke his handsome face. Mo Yen. He grabbed her little hand and planted a kiss on her cheek. Don't tease me. What a joke, what day was it today? She already couldn't take teasing normally, let alone now that he carried her and started walking towards the bed. Miss Chiao immediately became nervous and instinctively grabbed his sleeve. What are you doing? Miss Chiao blinked. She didn't know why, but her heart was pounding uncontrollably at this moment. It's late, of course we should rest. We still have to wake up early tomorrow to pay respects to grandmother. Prince Mo placed the little girl on the bed and began to untie her belt. Slap. She silently slapped 2 immobilization talismans on his head. Along with the slightly swaying candlelight, it fluttered on his forehead. Prince Mo, pulling down the 2 floating talismans on his head, Prince Mo helplessly looked at her and rubbed her little face. Baby, don't be naughty. The moment Arbor climbed onto the bed, she immediately rolled to the innermost part of the bed. She pulled the blanket and wrapped herself into a small cocoon, only revealing 2 dark eyes to look at him. Prince Mo pretended not to see the little girl's rolling eyes. With a sweep of his palm, he extinguished the brightest candles in the bedchamber. Only a pair of wedding candles were left, emitting a faint glow. Prince Mo also laid down and reached out to tug at the blanket. Who knew that the little thing would wrap the entire blanket around her body? He couldn't help but find it funny. He had noticed a few times that she had this habit of wrapping herself in a blanket. She always liked to wrap herself into a cylinder, sometimes even burying her head in the blanket. Jojo, are you trying to freeze your husband to death? Mo Lien raised her hand and pulled again. This time, she finally pulled out a corner of the quilt and took the opportunity to slip in. The moment this fellow came in, he was like a small stove, extremely hot. He was born with a fire spirit body. Even if he was thrown into the snow, he wouldn't freeze. Even so, he still wanted to crawl over and snatch the blanket from her. The little guy pulled the quilt and hid his head inside, curling up and not moving. In less than a minute, the blanket on her head was pulled down by him. She was baffled to find herself in his arms. He patted her back gently. Go to sleep. She curled up beside him and did not move. After a while, she said, Mo Lien, will you always believe in me? Of course. His voice sounded softly in the night, revealing a faint trace of affection and magnetism. Then I believe you too. The little fellow nodded and said after getting a response. Mo Lien couldn't help but be slightly startled, and then she found it a little funny. After interacting with her for so many years, he was already familiar with her temperament. Perhaps it was because of that nightmare, the little girl's temperament was cold, and she wouldn't easily give in to others. This was the typical character of not letting go of the falcon until she saw the hair. Unless you reached out and grabbed her tightly. Otherwise, she would definitely not take the initiative to take a step forward. Chapter 1376. Right now, he sincerely admired his own quick-wittedness. If he hadn't taken the first step and infiltrated her life early on, and decisively captured this little thing, it was hard to say what the situation would have been like now. Baby, no matter when or where, no matter what happens, the first person I trust will be you. Mo Lien murmured before lifting her small head out of the blankets to get some fresh air. He also stole a kiss on her cheek while he was at it. When Xiao Mu heard this, she also nodded solemnly. Then the person I trust the most is also you. Mo Lien chuckled and patted her back. Okay. After a few minutes, Arbor asked, are you asleep? No. In fact, his mind was very clear. The clearer he was, the more he could smell the girl's pleasant scent. I can't sleep either. Arbor felt unbearably hot. She pushed him. You're too hot. Mo Lien. Do you want to help me get rid of the heat? In the night, his voice suddenly revealed a dangerous aura. Xiao Mu immediately associated it with that small booklet with pictures and text, and her small face flushed red in an instant. However, it was dark around the two of them, so he couldn't see her expression clearly. However, Xiao Mu guessed wrongly. What kind of gaze was Mo Lien's? Not to mention that there were two faint wedding candles lit inside the bedchamber. Even if they weren't lit, he could still clearly see her, even if it was just the slightest change in expression. His slender body flipped over and covered the small space above her head. Baby, I was thinking that you're still young and this isn't good for your body. He looked at her and murmured. I'll bear with it and raise you for a while. Raise you a little older. Kiki is. This feeling was driving her crazy. Uncomfortable. Tormented, unable to touch, who could stand it? I can't bear it anymore, okay? Who wants you to bear with it? As soon as Arbor opened his mouth, he realized that he was stuttering like a coward. Enraged, he turned his head and bit his hand. You're bullying me. He accused her in a small voice, then pressed down and kissed her endlessly. After kissing her, his fingers were just about to unbutton her clothes. Unexpectedly, the little girl stretched out her leg and hooked it around his body. She secretly used her strength and with a bang, she pushed him down instead. Mo Lien pursed her lips. Her almond-shaped eyes shone brightly in the dark. You like this position? I think we should sleep. Arbor coughed and said, as a doctor, I think it's better if you take care of me for another 2 or 3 years. Mo Lien. Why did he feel like the sky was about to fall when he heard this? Baby. Mo Lien looked so pitiful that she was about to cry. Go to sleep. The little one coughed and ignored a certain reaction from him. She raised her hand and patted his head comfortingly. Don't think too much. It's not good for your body. Then she laid in his arms and really found a comfortable position. Sleep, sleep, sleep. Just like that, she fell asleep irresponsibly. Mo Lien. Why do I feel like the future is still so dark? The next day, Arbor groggily felt someone shake him awake. When she opened her eyes, she saw the crown prince's watery eyes looking at her pitifully. Morning. The little one immediately hugged his neck and rubbed her mouth on his face. A certain someone who had been gloomy the entire night was instantly relieved. Chapter 1377. After the two of them finished washing up noisily, they put on their formal attire and court attire and headed for the Empress Dowager's longevity palace. The great king and the queen were currently chatting with the old Empress Dowager in the longevity palace's side chamber when they heard the announcement, the crown prince and the crown princess have arrived, from outside. He immediately raised his head and looked outside. From where he was, he could see a couple walking in hand. At first glance, they truly were jade made by nature and extremely pleasing to the eye. However, her stoic-faced daughter-in-law was still expressionless. Empress Xiao inwardly pursed her lips. Come. Quickly come to grandmother. The Empress Dowager's eyes curved into crescents as she waved at Arbor and patted the brocade couch next to her. Grandmother. Royal father, royal mother. Arbor bowed in succession and walked forward as instructed. There were 2 elderly women sitting below the Empress Dowager. They looked to be in their early 60s, but Arbor didn't recognize them. The Empress Dowager hooked her arm and pulled her to sit next to her, grinning from ear to ear. Child, this is Consort Dowager Shu of Kanghui Palace. This is Matriarch Hong of the Hong family. Arbor's gaze slid over the 2 elderly women, and she stood up and bowed to them. The two elderly women didn't dare to be careless and hastily stood up to have her dispense with the formalities. It was said that matriarch Hong of the Hong family was Her Majesty the Empress Dowager's biological sister. However, that old madam's dark skin and old-fashioned appearance were completely different from the benevolent and plump Empress Dowager. Child, it must have been very tiring to accompany the Crown Prince to Jiaozhong base to complete a mission, right? It was all right. Arbor actually didn't find it very tiring. However, she was a bit displeased that the disgusting Fan Chioha had appeared. The Empress Dowager looked at her with a grin and nodded. I knew you were a child who could endure hardships. Otherwise, you wouldn't have such a high cultivation at such a young age. Sitting on the side, the great king and the queen couldn't help but look a bit awkward. Their cultivation levels were very low, and in the Empress Dowager's eyes, that meant they couldn't endure hardships. In reality, they couldn't be blamed for not working hard. After all, their constitution and aptitude determined everything. Some mystic cultivators with mediocre aptitude might not be able to break through above level 5 even if they reached mystic cultivation. There were even some who were so pitiful that they couldn't even open their inner worlds. In any case, I've opened my inner world. The Empress Dowager, the Empress Dowager. Cough, Imperial Mother, let the Crown Princess serve the tea first. Empress Dowager nodded repeatedly. The royal maid, who had been waiting for a long time on the side, immediately walked up to Xiao Mu with a saucer in her hands and bowed submissively. Xiao Mu creased her brows and stood there motionlessly. She merely gazed coldly at that royal maid who had her head lowered and was holding up the saucer. Emdowager to Emdowager to Emdowager, Empress Dowager. Seeing that his daughter-in-law was still standing there, he hastily gave his son a look. Prince Mo glanced innocently at his old father and didn't rush Arbor. Instead, he reached out to squeeze her hand. What did you discover? Today, if my hand touches the tea you offered, Empress Dowager will drink it. If she faints after drinking the tea I offered, I probably won't be able to clear my name even if I jump into the Wanghai. Xiao Mu's chilly and desolate voice was like throwing a rock into a lake, immediately creating ripples in the lake. What? What? Empress Xiao widened her eyes in shock. Her sharp gaze instantly swept over the royal maid who hastily knelt down. That royal maid trembled in fright and shook her head repeatedly. Chapter 1378. No, I didn't. Crown Princess, I definitely didn't poison the Empress Dowager, Crown Princess. The Great King. Your Majesty the Queen, Empress Dowager, please understand. That palace maid agitatedly went forward on her knees and kept kowtowing in front of the Empress Dowager. The Empress Dowager looked at her coldly. You mean to say that the Crown Princess framed you? No. This servant doesn't dare. This servant doesn't mean that. The palace maid stammered. Feng Gu was so angry that her whole body trembled. She went forward and slapped that palace maid twice. Kai Qin, you've been with the Empress Dowager for many years. How dare you do such a foolish thing today? Nanny Feng, I didn't do it, it wasn't me. Shut up. Feng Gu shouted angrily, I was the one who told you to prepare everything today. You were the one who handled everything. Who else do you want to blame? The palace maid named Kai Qin knelt there and bit her lip, looking like she had suffered a great grievance. There's definitely no problem with this tea. If your Majesty the Empress Dowager doesn't believe me, this servant is willing to drink it. After saying that, she didn't wait for the frowning Empress Dowager to speak. She snatched the cup of steaming tea with one hand and drank it all in one gulp. After that, she choked and coughed violently. When she looked up, she saw the Crown Princess and the Crown Prince standing not far away from her. The two of them were looking at her like she was a living corpse, which made her heart tremble with fear. Xiao Yao. Xiao Yao is here. Xiao Yao took a step forward. Go feed her a piece of the plate of pastries on the table. When Kai-Chin heard this, her whole body trembled and she almost immediately fell to the ground. Everyone present was shrewd. When they saw the palace maid's reaction, they immediately understood everything. Empress Zhao stood up in a rage, "You wicked servant! You dare to poison the Empress Dowager! Guards! Here!" The guards who were waiting outside the hall immediately took a step forward and swarmed in. However, at this time, Xiao Yao had already grabbed that palace maid Caichin's arm and stuffed the pastry into her mouth. In a flash, Caichin's face turned red, and then it turned black. She fell to the ground with difficulty, curled up's body, and struggled. Finally, her limbs stiffened and died. This process only took a few short minutes. Everyone's hair stood on end as they shuddered all over. The toxicity of this poison was actually so strong that it left one with no room to retaliate. Xiao Mu said faintly, "According to grandmother's eating habits, she will only take 2 to 3 bites of this pastry. The toxicity is not as strong as swallowing the whole pastry, so she can still be saved afterwards." The king was so angry that his entire body was trembling. He slammed his palm on the table and said, "He's simply a complete disgrace. Go and find out who's so vicious and daring to do this. This poison is so powerful. If that person poisoned it in the palace without anyone knowing, wouldn't that be terrible?" Empress Zhao said worriedly. Arbor shook his head. "These 2 poisons are very difficult to refine. They can only be released in a small area." The great king's heart calmed down a little, but he was still a little dissatisfied. "You killed this palace maid. How are you going to find out who's the mastermind?" "There's no need to ask." The Empress Dowager sighed and shook her head. "I think I know who it is." Everyone was stunned and looked at the Empress Dowager. Chapter 1379. Feng Gu directed the servants to quickly change the tea. This time, the tea ceremony went very smoothly. After such a fuss, the Empress Dowager appeared somewhat tired. After the tea ceremony, she didn't keep the young couple any longer. Before leaving, she held Arbor's hand and softly comforted him before letting them go. Empress Dowager. Old Madame Hong wanted to argue with the Empress Dowager, but the other party waved at her. "Your matter, let's talk about it another day." Old Madame Hong had no choice but to get up and leave, secretly angry. Today, she actually wanted to ask for the Empress Dowager's marriage decree. This old Madame Hong had taken a fancy to the Duan family's 7th Miss, Duan Siren, and wanted to let her grandson marry her. Unfortunately, the Duan family looked down on her poor little Hong family, so she could only shamelessly come to ask the Empress Dowager to write a decree to directly appoint a marriage between Hong Riwei and the Duan family's 7th Miss. Her original intention was to quickly ask for one while the Empress Dowager was in a good mood today. Who knew she would encounter such an unlucky thing? Someone actually poisoned the Empress Dowager without rhyme or reason. After dismissing everyone, the Empress Dowager sat quietly on the brocade couch, not speaking for a long time. "Your Highness." Feng Gu softly called her. The Empress Dowager recovered her senses and smiled at her. "What's wrong? Don't worry. All these years, what great storms have I not experienced? Don't mention such a small matter of poisoning." Feng Gu's eyes reddened, and she stepped forward to softly comfort, "Your Highness, don't be sad. Feng Gu, you also know who did it, right?" The Empress Dowager looked disappointed. "I didn't expect that she could do such a cruel thing. I watched this child grow up since she was young. Now, she's so unfamiliar that I don't dare to recognize her." Feng Gu took out a handkerchief and wiped the corners of her eyes. Only the commandery princess can freely enter and leave the Empress Dowager's bedchamber. If you say it has nothing to do with her, this servant also won't believe it. Moreover, she was so close to Kai-Chin a while ago. So everything was premeditated. The Empress Dowager sighed softly. How can a person become so terrifying? As she spoke, she shook her head, looking exhausted. Mo Yen held Arbor's hand and walked slowly towards the eastern palace. Grandmother is unhappy, Xiao Mu said with a frown. Mo Yen, do you think grandmother is angry with me? Why would grandmother be angry with you? Mo Yen watched as she turned around with a cautious expression on her face. She couldn't help but feel sorry for her. She held her little hand and said, I won't allow you to think about it. No, I just saw that she looked tired. She must be sad because of what happened today. That's because some people's actions made her sad. It has nothing to do with you. Mo Yen raised her hand and stroked her head. Grandmother has probably guessed who poisoned her. Arbor didn't say anything and just nodded. Grandmother's 70th birthday will be in about a month and a half. When the time comes, we'll let her relax and be happy. Arbor nodded again. The Empress Dowager and the old lady of the Qiao family were two completely different people. The Empress Dowager was wise, intelligent, and kind. She also hoped that such an old lady could be happy and live a long and healthy life. Then let's think about what gift to give the Empress Dowager. This is the first gift I'm going to give you after we get married. Think about it for me. Chapter 1380. Your Highness, Your Highness. Huifeng suddenly appeared in front of him and solemnly reported, a group of violent mobs has appeared on South Shilua Street. They've already broken into private residences and are currently smashing and looting. Mo Yen's expression turned solemn, and Arbor hastily said, let's hurry over and take a look. The two of them immediately mounted their horses and left the palace. They gathered several thousand Imperial Guards and hurried to South Shilua Street with Imperial Guard Commander Huifeng. Shilua Street was originally a shanty town where many impoverished people were housed. Now that a conflict had broken out, all sorts of drawbacks were revealed. The crowded street was completely packed with people. Fourth Miss Shu Hui was among this crowd, and she was so frightened that all color drained from her face. Fortunately, she had two powerful maidservants who knew martial arts by her side. Otherwise, this fourth miss would have long been torn apart and eaten up by the surrounding mobs. She didn't understand. She had clearly followed eldest sister Shu Quan to this destitute place like Shilua Street to be charitable and give out food. Everything had been fine at the beginning, so how did it turn into this situation? Several dozen strong and burly men squeezed everywhere with all their might, pushing many old, weak, women, and children to the ground. Shu Quan was surrounded by several guards, and when she saw the opportunity, she hastily reached out to grab two fallen children and hastily dodged to the side. This unforeseen event happened very suddenly, and it was already too late for the guards to step forward and stop them. Those irascible burly men seemed to have gone mad as they stepped on and kicked anyone they saw. Many commoners were injured and fell to the ground with painful groans. Shu Quan tightly clenched her fists, almost unable to believe everything before her eyes. Screwed up, everything was screwed up. Ah! Fourth Miss Shu Hui and the two maidservants beside her were pushed to the side by the crowd. One of the maidservants tightly grabbed Shu Hui's arm and shouted, "Miss, miss." Shu Hui's face was pale from fright, and she lost her footing and fell to the ground. She struggled to stand up, but she was bumped head-on by someone, and she stumbled to the side. As for the maidservant who was grabbing her arm, she was immediately shoved aside. Xiaoju, Xiaoju. Shu Hui was so shocked that her voice trembled. She stumbled and fell into the arms of a big, sweaty man. The man immediately embraced her warm and fragrant body and grinned happily. He stretched out his arm and wrapped it around her waist. He bared his teeth and said, "Miss, you're really passionate." "No, no, let go of me, let go." Shu Hui suddenly became anxious, twisting her body anxiously to push the burly man away. However, she was just an ordinary woman. How could she resist the man's strength? In an instant, He grabbed her waist and pulled her into a small alley at the side. No, no. Ah. Let go of me, sister. Sister, save me. Hua. A loud noise was heard as several crazed brawny men swung their hoes and iron rods and smashed open the 2 rice vats at the entrance of the food store. White rice flowed out with a gurgling sound. Many people rushed forward to grab the rice with their hands and fought over it. The situation was getting out of hand. Capture all of the rioters, don't let a single one off. At this moment, Mo Lien rushed over while holding Qiao Mu's small hand. Yes, sir. Everyone shouted in unison. 2,000 Imperial Guardsmen flanked the crowd from the left and right. They orderly scattered into 100 groups, holding long ropes and iron hooks. When they saw the vicious brawny men, they urged their horses forward and hooked them down. Then, they used the long ropes to firmly wrap around their necks and urged their horses to whip them away. I'll make it 8. These 2 days are too busy during the day. I'll give you 10 on Saturday. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.